In the misty dawn of Roman history, the future capital of the world was nothing more than scattered villages atop 7 hills beside the Tiber River. The gentle morning light bathed these ancient slopes as shepherds guided their flocks through the marshy valleys between the heights. This humble beginning would grow into the eternal city that would shape Western civilization for millennia to come. The story of Rome's founding is shrouded in legends that blend with archaeological evidence. The most famous tale tells of twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, abandoned as infants and nursed by a she-wolf in a cave on the Palatine Hill. The rhythmic breathing of this legendary wolf, caring for the future founders, echoes softly through the corridors of time. Archaeological findings confirm that the first settlements on the Palatine Hill began around the 8th century before our era. Small huts of wood and mud brick dotted the hilltop, their thatched roofs rustling softly in the morning breeze. Below, the Tiber meandered lazily through the landscape, its waters flowing silver in the moonlight, connecting this humble settlement to the wider Mediterranean world. According to legend, as the brothers grew into strong young men, they decided to establish a city, but disagreed on its location. They consulted the gods through augury, watching the flight patterns of birds to seek divine approval. Romulus, standing on the Palatine, observed 12 vultures, while Remus, positioned on the Aventine, saw only 6. This celestial message seemed clear. Romulus would found the city. On April the 21st, 753 years before the Christian era, Romulus traced the sacred boundary of his city with a plow drawn by a white bull and heifer. The furrow he carved in the earth was called the Pomerium, a sacred line separating the civilized space of the city from the untamed world beyond. The soft sound of the plow cutting through the rich earth marked the birth of what would become Rome. The peace between the brothers was short-lived. Remus leaped over the sacred furrow, mocking his brother's boundary. Romulus, in a tragic fit of rage, struck down his twin, declaring that any who dared violate Rome's sacred boundary would meet the same fate. Thus, our Rome began with an act of violence, a pattern that would echo through its long history. The early Romans were pragmatic people, and Romulus knew his fledgling city needed women to ensure its future. He invited the neighboring Sabine people to a festival honoring the god Consus. As the festivities reached their peak and wine flowed freely, the Roman men seized the Sabine women as brides, an event known as the Rape of the Sabines. When the Sabine fathers and brothers came to wage war for their women's return, the kidnapped women themselves brokered peace. Standing with their Roman children, they pleaded for reconciliation between their birth families and new husbands. This act of mediation united Romans and Sabines, doubling the population of the young city and establishing one of its earliest diplomatic traditions. For 37 years, Romulus ruled as Rome's first king. He divided the population into patricians, the noble families, and plebeians, the common citizens. He created the Senate, a council of elder statesmen whose wisdom would guide Rome for centuries to come. The gentle murmur of these early senators, their voices deep and measured, discussed the fate of their small but ambitious city. The 7 hills of Rome each developed their own character and purpose. The Palatine, where emperors would later build their palaces, already showed signs of elevated importance. The Capitoline, with its steep cliffs, would become the sacred heart of the city, home to the great temple of Jupiter. The Aventine attracted the plebeian population, while the Quirinal, Viminal, Esquiline, and Caelian hills gradually filled with homes, temples, and markets. Following Romulus came six more kings, each adding layers to this growing settlement. Numa Pompilius, the second king, was known for his wisdom and religious reforms. During his peaceful 43-year reign, he established many of Rome's religious institutions, including the Vestal Virgins, who tended the eternal flame of Rome. These young priestesses, dressed in white, moved silently through the sacred spaces, their presence a calming constant in an ever-changing world. The third king, Tullus Hostilius, expanded Rome's territory through conquest. His 32-year reign saw the destruction of Alba Longa, Rome's ancient rival, and the absorption of its population into the growing city. The measured steps of marching legions created a rhythm that would eventually span continents. Ancus Marcius, the fourth king, balanced war with infrastructure. He built Rome's first bridge across the Tiber, connecting the city to its territories beyond the river. The gentle lapping of water against the bridge's stone pillars created a soothing sound that lulled the city to sleep each night. Lucius Tarquinius Priscus, the fifth king, brought Etruscan influences to Rome. He initiated the construction of the great sewer system, the Cloaca Maxima, which turned the swampy valleys between the hills into usable land. The flowing waters beneath the city created a constant, comforting whisper that would persist for centuries. Servius Tullius, the sixth king, built Rome's first walls, encompassing all 7 hills. These walls, stretching for miles around the growing city, created a sense of security and unity. Moonlight cast shadows of these ancient fortifications as Romans slept soundly, protected by stone and engineering. The seventh and final king, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, earned his epithet the Proud through tyrannical rule. His arrogance and his son's assault on the noblewoman Lucretia sparked the revolution that ended the monarchy. In the quiet hours before dawn, conspirators gathered in shadowed corners, their whispered plans giving birth to the Roman Republic. Before moving to that fateful transition, we linger in the peaceful scenes of early Rome. As evening fell, smoke from countless hearths rose gently into the twilight sky, carrying the scents of simple cooking, bread, olive oil, and herbs gathered from the surrounding hills. Children played in the narrow streets between houses, their laughter echoing off stone walls, while elders shared stories and wisdom. The Forum, which would later become the beating heart of the empire, was then a simple marketplace and gathering place. Merchants packed up their wares as shadows lengthened, their day's trading complete. The sound of a distant lyre drifted through the air as someone practiced ancient melodies that connected Rome to its past. In these early years, the Romans developed their distinctive character, practical, disciplined, yet deeply spiritual. Every home had its household gods, the Laurels and Penates, whose small shrines were tended daily. Every meal began with a libation to these protective spirits, drops of wine or oil falling like gentle rain onto the sacred flames. The 7 hills, each with its own neighborhoods and traditions, created a city of villages, each maintaining its own identity within the larger whole. As night fell, oil lamps flickered to life in windows, creating a constellation of earthly stars that mirrored the heavens above. Watchmen made their rounds, their footsteps and calls of all is well, providing a comforting rhythm throughout the quiet hours. Above this early Roman life, the stars wheeled in their eternal courses, the same stars that had guided the founders and would witness the rise of the greatest empire the world had known. The gentle Tiber continued its timeless flow toward the sea, carrying away the concerns of the day while bringing the promise of tomorrow's renewal. As we close this chapter on Rome's founding, the seven hills grow distant and peaceful in the gathering darkness, their early stories forming the foundation for the magnificent history to come. In the next chapter, we'll journey forward to witness the birth of the Roman Republic when the people of Rome cast off the last king and began their experiment in shared governance. But for now, the gentle rhythms of early Rome, the flowing river, the whispered prayers, the soft footsteps of watchmen guide us into peaceful slumber. As stars shine over the seven hills, we witness Rome's transformation from kingdom to republic. Picture the year 509 before our era, when angry citizens expelled their final king. The tyranny of Tarquinius Superbus had become unbearable, his arrogance pushing Romans to create something unprecedented, a government without kings. Listen to the gentle murmur of the Senate House as Lucius Junius Brutus leads the new government. Instead of one ruler, Romans chose two consuls, each checking the other's power. Like balanced scales, this system prevented tyranny through shared authority. Picture the forum bustling with citizens debating laws under open sky. The Senate, composed of elder statesmen, guided policy with wisdom accumulated over generations. Their togas moved like gentle waves as they deliberated Rome's future, their voices measured and calm. The division between patricians and plebeians created society's fundamental structure. Patricians, descendants of Rome's founding families, held most political power. Plebeians, the common citizens, formed the majority but initially lacked representation. This tension would drive centuries of reform. Listen to the city awakening each morning, merchants setting up stalls, artisans beginning work, citizens gathering for political assemblies. The rhythm of republican life evolved from military discipline into civic duty. When plebeians demanded greater rights, they employed creative protest. In 494 before our era, they simply withdrew from Rome, leaving the city nearly empty. This secession forced patricians to negotiate, demonstrating that power ultimately rested in the people. Picture the resulting compromise, the Law of the 12 Tables, Rome's first written laws. Bronze tablets displayed these rules in the forum, ensuring justice was visible to all. Citizens could read their rights rather than depending on noble interpretation. The office of tribune protected plebeian interests. These elected officials could veto any magistrate's decision, their word carrying divine protection. Like guardians of the common good, they stood between citizens and potential abuse of power. Listen to the steady development of Roman institutions. Censors counted citizens and supervised public morals. Praetors administered justice. Aediles managed markets and public works. Each office balanced others, creating governmental harmony through careful distribution of responsibility. Military service connected citizenship with civic duty. Citizen soldiers left farms to defend Rome, then returned to their fields when campaigns ended. This tradition strengthened both army and state, making military service inseparable from political participation. Picture religious ceremonies interweaving with public life. Vestal virgins maintained the sacred fire, their presence ensuring Rome's divine protection. Augurs read omens before important decisions, connecting human politics with supernatural guidance. The cursus honorum provided the standard career path for ambitious Romans. Young men progressed through increasingly important offices, gaining experience before reaching the consulship. This systematic advancement ensured leaders possessed necessary skills. Listen to diplomatic negotiations as Rome expanded beyond Latium. Former enemies became allies, their defeated cities joining the Roman Confederation. This inclusive approach transformed conquest into integration, building loyalty through shared benefits. Republican values emphasized duty, dignity, and service. Romans admired gravitas, serious purpose combined with self control. Citizens competed for honor rather than wealth, though prosperity often followed public service. Picture evening gatherings where families discussed civic duties over simple meals. Parents taught children about obligation to the state, personal honor, and religious duty. These conversations transmitted Republican values across generations. During emergencies, Romans appointed dictators with absolute power for 6 months. This practice showed remarkable trust, as these leaders voluntarily returned authority when crises ended. Cincinnatus, called from his plow to save Rome, became the ideal of selfless service. Listen to legal proceedings where citizens received fair trials under established procedures. Accused Romans could appeal to the people, ensuring no single official could pronounce final judgment. Justice meant process, not merely outcome. Religious tolerance characterized early republican policy. Different gods were welcomed as Rome expanded, their worship enriching rather than threatening traditional practices. This flexibility created cultural synthesis while maintaining Roman identity. Picture the gradual expansion of citizen rights. Former slaves could gain freedom and citizenship. Allied communities received various levels of Roman privileges. The Republic evolved through inclusion rather than rigid exclusion. Trade flourished as Rome secured broader territories. Picture merchant ships arriving at Ostia with grain from Sicily, wine from Greece, luxury goods from the East. Commercial success supported political stability. Listen to theatrical performances where playwrights adapted Greek dramas for Roman audiences. Entertainment served education, reinforcing civic values while providing relaxation. Culture and politics intertwined naturally in Republican life. The patron-client relationship structured social obligations. Wealthy patrons supported poorer clients who provided political backing in return. These networks bound society together through mutual dependence. Picture public works projects employing thousands of citizens. Aqueducts brought fresh water, roads connected distant territories, temples honored the gods. Infrastructure development demonstrated Republican prosperity. Education focused on practical skills needed for citizenship. Boys learned rhetoric for public speaking, mathematics for commerce, physical training for military service. Private tutors provided instruction in wealthy homes, while others learned through apprenticeships. Listen to Senate debates, where tradition guided procedure but innovation addressed new challenges. Senators rose in order of seniority, their advice carrying weight based on experience. Formal courtesy masked intense political competition. Women, though excluded from politics, influenced society through family connections. Picture Cornelia, mother of the Gracchi, educating her sons for public service. Republican women shaped culture through domestic authority and religious participation. As law adapted to expanding territory, legal professionals developed sophisticated jurisprudence. Picture judges consulting precedents, lawyers arguing cases with references to established principles. Roman law became both science and art. Military innovation kept pace with political development. The legionary system provided flexible tactical formations. Engineering corps built siege works and field fortifications. Professional officers led citizen armies with increasing effectiveness. Picture festivals marking the Republican calendar. Religious holidays provided community celebration while reinforcing civic identity. These occasions combined worship with social gathering, strengthening bonds between citizens. Listen to nightfall in Republican Rome. Watchmen patrolled streets, calling the hours. Oil lamps flickered in windows as families concluded evening activities. The city rested while maintaining vigilance against threats. Foreign policy balanced expansion with consolidation. Recent conquests required integration before new territories were sought. This patient approach created sustainable growth rather than overstretched empire. Picture the Republic's maturation through institutional refinement. Each challenge produced adaptation rather than replacement of traditional structures. Evolution preserved values while addressing contemporary needs. As morning approaches, imagine the Roman cock announcing dawn. Citizens rose to duties, combining private concern with public service. Republican life demanded balance between individual ambition and collective welfare. Listen to the promise of this system. Power distributed among many hands, authority checked by competing offices, citizens participating in their own governance. The Republic offered humanity an alternative to autocracy. In our next chapter, we shall witness Rome's greatest external challenge as Carthage across the Mediterranean threatens republican expansion. We will see how these institutions responded to existential warfare. Picture now the Republic at its foundation. Imperfect but aspiring, traditional yet adaptive, creating governmental forms that would influence political thought for millennia. Sleep peacefully, knowing that democratic ideals, though often challenged, continue inspiring those who value freedom over tyranny. As Mediterranean waves lap gently at distant shores, we witness the clash between two civilizations that would determine the ancient world's fate. Picture the 3rd century before our era, when Rome and Carthage, both growing powers, faced each other across waters that would become stained with blood. Close your eyes and see their ships, purple sails against blue sea, merchants transformed into warriors. Carthage commanded the seas with expertise honed over centuries. Picture her harbors filled with trading vessels, her admirals navigating by stars Romans had never mapped. The Phoenician city grew wealthy, controlling western Mediterranean commerce, her purple dye coloring royal garments throughout the ancient world. Listen to the first clash over Sicily. The Mamertines, mercenaries controlling Messana, appealed to both powers for protection. This small request ignited century-spanning conflict. Rome, traditionally land-focused, discovered maritime warfare's necessity when fighting an island power. Picture Roman engineers studying a captured Carthaginian warship like scholars examining ancient texts. Within months, Roman shipyards hummed with construction. Where Carthage relied on traditional superiority, Rome applied systematic innovation, adding the corvus, a boarding bridge that transformed naval battles into infantry combat. The First Punic War stretched across 23 years. Listen to the creaking wood as Roman ships learned Mediterranean navigation. Picture fleets destroyed by inexperience, then rebuilt with stubborn determination. Rome lost hundreds of vessels to storms, but constructed replacements faster than Carthage could destroy them. Naval victory at Mylae announced Rome's maritime emergence. Picture captured ships' rams decorating Roman temples, bronze trophies celebrating unexpected naval success. Admiral Duilius received Rome's first naval triumph, his victory column marking naval achievement previously thought impossible. After peace, Hannibal Barca's son nursed revenge. Picture young Hannibal swearing eternal enmity at his father's altar, childhood vow shaping adult destiny. While Rome celebrated victory, Carthage prepared methodically for renewed conflict. Listen to the preparation of Hannibal's epic march. Picture war elephants trained for mountain passage, supply trains organized with mathematical precision, soldiers drilling for terrain they'd never encountered. The Second Punic War began not with naval conflict, but terrestrial audacity. The Alpine crossing defies imagination. Picture elephants climbing snow-covered passes, soldiers freezing in terrain without adequate clothing, horses falling into chasms, opening like hungry mouths. Winter struck early, trapping the army in conditions that tested human endurance beyond normal limits. Listen to vinegar being heated to crack ice-covered rocks, engineers creating paths where none existed. Hannibal lost half his army crossing the Alps, yet emerged in Italy with force sufficient to terrorize Rome for 15 years. The achievement outweighed its cost. Picture Roman armies discovering superiority meant little against tactical genius. At Trebia, Hannibal used hidden troops like theater stagehands arranging surprise. Lake Trasimene demonstrated how terrain could become weapon. Romans fought blind in morning mist, uncertain whether enemies were shadows or soldiers. The Battle of Cannae revealed Hannibal's masterpiece. Picture Roman confidence approaching 80,000 strong, their massive formation like unstoppable tide. Hannibal deliberately weakened his center, creating tactical pocket that swallowed Roman advance. Picture wings closing like crushing jaws. 50,000 Romans died while Hannibal preserved most of his force. Listen to Rome's response to catastrophe. Instead of panic came determination. No public mourning permitted. Treasury opened for military spending. Allies pressured to maintain loyalty. Fabius Maximus employed delaying tactics, following Hannibal like persistent shadow while avoiding decisive battle. Picture Hannibal's frustration as Roman strategy denied him final victory. He couldn't besiege Rome without preparation for extended siege. Italian allies began wavering toward Rome as Hannibal failed to deliver promised liberation. Time gradually shifted advantage from tactical brilliance to strategic patience. Young Scipio advocated aggressive response. Picture him training legions, using Hannibal's own methods, incorporating flexibility into traditionally rigid Roman tactics. His Spanish campaigns demonstrated Roman adaptability, securing territory while preparing for final confrontation. Listen to the Battle of Zama's approach. Hannibal, recalled from Italy, faced Scipio with army partly composed of untrained African recruits. Picture elephants charging futilely down corridors created in Roman formation, their traditional shock value neutralized by prepared response. Roman discipline met tactical innovation in decisive clash. Picture veteran legionaries advancing with measured step. Formations maintained despite pressure experienced defeating improvisation. Hannibal escaped, but Carthaginian power was broken. Peace terms demonstrated Roman moderation combined with practical security. Picture Carthage surrendering fleet, paying indemnity, accepting territorial restrictions. Rome sought manageable resolution rather than total destruction, a decision later regretted. 50 years passed before the third conflict. Picture Carthage recovering economic vitality while maintaining military weakness, Rome observing with growing unease. Cato the Elder ended every speech demanding Carthage's destruction, reflecting Roman anxiety about resurgent rival. The Third Punic War resembled execution more than warfare. Picture Roman siege works encircling Carthage systematically, approaches built with engineering precision, creating inevitable conclusion. 3 years of gradual strangulation preceded final assault. Listen to the city's fall. Picture systematic destruction, buildings demolished stone by stone, population dispersed across Mediterranean, legendary saltwater sowing ensuring agricultural destruction. Rome eliminated competition permanently, yet Carthage's cultural influence outlasted political existence. Picture architectural techniques, agricultural methods, and commercial practices spreading through Roman world. Punic knowledge enriched conquerors, while memories of Hannibal's genius inspired tactical innovation. Roman naval expertise, forced development during Punic conflicts, enabled later Mediterranean domination. Picture standardized ship construction, trained commanders, systematic navigation, replacing previous coastal dependency. Necessity had transformed Rome into maritime power. Military reforms, catalyzed by Punic warfare, created professional Roman army. Picture soldiers drilling formations adapted from Carthaginian flexibility, equipment improved through combat experience, command structures refined under pressure. War's harsh lessons produced organizational excellence. Picture the empire's psychological transformation following victory. Rome shifted from defensive confederation to aggressive expansion, Punic success encouraging territorial ambition. Military confidence, justified by proven capability, led toward systematic conquest of Mediterranean basin. Economic consequences reshaped Roman society. Picture slave labor from captured territories, wealth distribution creating social tensions, traditional farming disrupted by latifundia. Victory's benefits were unevenly shared, creating problems future generations would address. Listen to veterans returning to Italy, their stories mixing celebration with trauma. Picture integration challenges as soldiers readjusted to civilian life, agricultural communities absorbing former combatants, disabled veterans requiring social support. War's human cost extended beyond battlefield casualties. Cultural exchange accelerated through military contact. Picture Roman officers appreciating Carthaginian urban planning, soldiers adopting foreign equipment innovations, architects studying captured engineering knowledge. Conflict facilitated cultural transmission despite political hostility. Religious practices evolved through Mediterranean exposure. Picture Eastern deities gaining Roman adherents, mystery cults spreading through military channels, traditional practices adapting to cosmopolitan influences. Spiritual diversity reflected territorial expansion. As twilight settles over former battlefields, we recognize how conflict reshaped civilization. Picture archaeological sites revealing mixed cultural elements, trading routes established through military conquest, becoming commercial highways, linguistic evolution, reflecting sustained cultural contact. In our next chapter, we shall witness Caesar's Gallic campaigns, watching how Punic war lessons enabled Roman expansion beyond Mediterranean basin. Hannibal's tactical innovations lived on through Roman adoption, his strategic vision influencing subsequent military thought. But for now, imagine starlight reflecting on calm Mediterranean waters. Former battlegrounds return to peaceful navigation. Picture merchant vessels following routes once traveled by war galleys, commercial exchange replacing military conflict, human ingenuity adapting lessons of destruction toward creative purposes. Listen to waves lapping ancient shores, their eternal rhythm outlasting political struggles. Dream of civilizations learning through conflict's harsh school, knowledge preserved despite political dissolution, human excellence emerging from competitive pressure. Sleep peacefully, knowing that even devastating conflicts contribute to cultural development through forced innovation, expanded horizons, and hard-won wisdom about human organizational capacity. As morning mist rises from the Rubicon, we encounter a figure whose ambition reshaped Rome's destiny. Picture Gaius Julius Caesar in his early 40s, a patrician of modest means whose family claimed descent from Venus herself. Listen to his footsteps echoing through Roman streets as he rises from provincial governor to master of an empire. Picture young Caesar's humble beginnings, following traditional Roman career paths. As quaestor, aedile, then praetor, he employed charm rather than wealth to gain public support. His theatrical flair, combined with genuine concern for common citizens, set him apart from typical aristocrats. Listen to his voice coaching actors in public games, his populist gestures winning hearts while offending conservative senators. The governorship of Gaul arrived like a key opening a vault of opportunity. Picture Caesar studying maps in 58 before our era, calculating the tribal divisions that would enable systematic conquest. The province offered him armies, wealth, and territory beyond senatorial oversight, tools for transforming Rome's military and political landscape. Listen to the sound of Gallic tribal councils meeting around fires in forest clearings. These Celtic peoples possessed advanced agriculture, sophisticated crafts, and warrior traditions extending back centuries. Yet tribal rivalries prevented unified resistance against Roman expansion, their divisions becoming Caesar's advantage. Picture the Helvetii migration triggering Caesar's first intervention. 400,000 people moved across Gaul seeking new lands, their wagon trains creating muddy rivers across green countryside. Caesar positioned his legions carefully, turning humanitarian response into strategic opportunity. The subsequent victory established Roman presence beyond traditional boundaries. Ariovistus the German represented the next threat requiring Caesar's attention. Picture negotiations between Roman and Germanic cultures, formal Latin courtesy meeting tribal directness. Caesar's decision to attack demonstrated his understanding that showing strength deterred future challenges while establishing precedents for Rhine crossings. Listen to the sound of construction throughout Caesar's Gallic campaigns. Roman engineering built temporary bridges across major rivers in days, siege works that turned warfare into mathematical precision. These projects employed disciplined soldiers during rest periods, maintaining military readiness while creating infrastructure supporting further expansion. Picture the Belgian campaign revealing Gallic fighting methods. Forest warfare required tactical adaptation. Traditional Roman formations proved vulnerable in dense woodland. Caesar's genius emerged in developing modified techniques, training soldiers for specialized combat conditions. These innovations later influenced military doctrine throughout the empire. The British expeditions announced Roman power reaching beyond known geography. Picture preparations for the unknown, consulting traders about tides, designing ships for channel crossing, assembling forces for reaching what many considered world's edge. Though temporary, these invasions demonstrated no boundary could limit Roman ambition. Listen to the sound of winter quarters being established across Gaul. During inactive military seasons, Caesar composed his commentaries, transforming campaign records into political propaganda. His clear prose made distant events immediate for Roman audiences, building support for continued expansion while presenting himself as capable military leader. Picture Vercingetorix emerging as unified Gallic resistance leader. Young, charismatic, understanding Roman tactical methods, he coordinated tribal confederation using scorched earth strategies. This represented Caesar's most serious challenge, an enemy applying lessons learned from previous defeats to create coherent opposition. The siege of Alesia provided history's memorable moment. Picture Caesar's engineering masterpiece, double fortifications containing the city while defending against external relief forces. 80,000 defenders within Alesia faced simultaneous pressure from Roman siege works, while 250,000 allies approached from outside. Listen to the silence before battle's climax as relief forces attacked Roman positions. Picture Caesar wearing his distinctive red cloak, personally leading the final cavalry charge that broke enemy coordination. Vercingetorix's surrender followed defeat, ending unified Gallic resistance through personal diplomacy between warrior leaders. Statistical achievement astounded contemporaries. Picture 8 years transforming tribal regions into Roman provinces, military veterans settling in new colonies, trade routes extending economic networks into previously isolated regions. Caesar had added territory equivalent to existing Roman world, bringing millions under imperial taxation systems. Yet consequences extended beyond territorial gains. Picture veteran legions developing absolute loyalty to Caesar personally, rather than abstract republican institutions. Soldiers experienced unprecedented success under charismatic leadership, their allegiance shifting from senate to individual commander. Traditional civilian-military relationships fundamentally changed. Listen to Senate concerns growing alongside Caesar's achievements. Picture anxious debates in marble halls as reports arrived describing triumphs that overshadowed traditional republican accomplishments. Caesar's popularity with masses and army loyalty threatened established power distributions, creating fear among political elites. The Civil War emerged through institutional breakdown. Picture Pompey and Senate demanding Caesar disband armies before returning to Rome, Caesar calculating that compliance meant political death. His famous declaration while crossing the Rubicon, "The die is cast," acknowledged irreversible commitment to armed conflict. Military campaign proceeded with characteristic efficiency. Picture Italian cities opening gates to advancing armies, traditional republican forces melting away before veteran units. Caesar's clemency policy demonstrated sophisticated political understanding. Forgiveness rather than revenge created sustainable victory bases. Picture the Egyptian civil war drawing Caesar eastward, Alexandria's famous library burning accidentally during urban fighting. Cleopatra's intelligence fascinated Caesar, their relationship combining political alliance with personal attraction. Egyptian wealth and Greek learning influenced Caesar's later Roman reforms. The dictatorial period revealed comprehensive vision for imperial transformation. Picture Caesar reforming calendar systems, improving urban planning, expanding citizenship definitions. His adoption of Cleopatra's advisors demonstrated openness to foreign innovations, threatening traditional Roman conservatism. Listen to conspiracy forming among senators fearing permanent autocracy. Picture ancient family names joining moderate politicians in assassination planning. Their motives mixed genuine Republican devotion with personal ambitions, creating coalition united only by opposition to individual rule. March 15th, 44 before our era, marked the culmination. Picture Caesar entering Senate House ignoring warning omens, death coming through multiple wounds from close associates. His final words, whether historically accurate or later invention, captured betrayal's personal dimension. Picture civil war's immediate resumption following assassination. Caesar's reforms incomplete, his territorial expansions requiring administrative consolidation, republican institutions unable to manage empire's comprehensive demands. The conspiracy eliminated symptoms while ignoring systemic problems, causing autocratic emergence. Octavian, Caesar's adopted heir, learned from predecessors' mistakes. Picture him studying battle tactics developed during Gallic campaigns, administrative innovations interrupted by assassination, political alliances requiring careful management. Caesar's legacy provided both tactical knowledge and cautionary lessons. Gallic cultural transformation proceeded gradually through Romanization. Picture tribal nobility adopting Roman customs, urban centers developing classical architecture, Latin spreading through educational systems. Conquest initiated cultural synthesis rather than replacement, creating hybrid provincial identities. Military innovations tested during Gallic warfare influenced subsequent Roman tactics. Picture legion organization modified for greater flexibility, engineering capabilities enhanced through siege experience, cavalry tactics improved through interaction with tribal mounted units. Practical knowledge accumulated through campaign experience became institutional military wisdom. Economic integration followed territorial expansion. Picture Gallic mines providing precious metals for Roman currency, agricultural surplus supporting growing populations, trade networks extending through newly secure regions. Material prosperity demonstrated conquests, practical benefits, while creating dependencies binding provinces to central authority. Picture archaeological remains revealing transformation's material evidence. Roman roads connected former tribal territories, aqueducts supplied growing urban populations, amphitheaters provided entertainment formats spreading throughout provinces. Infrastructure development facilitated cultural integration while supporting economic exploitation. As evening stars appear above ancient Celtic hill forts, now housing Roman architecture, we recognize conquest's complex legacy. Picture cultural exchange operating bidirectionally, Gallic artistic traditions influencing Roman decorative styles, religious practices syncretizing through mutual exposure, linguistic evolution creating dialectical variations across expanded territories. In our next chapter, We shall witness Augustus transforming Caesar's conquests into systematic imperial administration. The lessons learned through Gallic experience would influence governmental structures, enabling long-term provincial integration. Listen now to Night Wind across former battlefields where Roman camps once stood. Picture tribal and Roman identities merging through generations of shared experience, creating Gallo-Roman culture that preserved elements from both traditions. Dream of ambition channeled through systematic expansion, military innovation born from strategic necessity, cultural transformation emerging through sustained contact. Sleep peacefully knowing that Caesar's Gallic conquest demonstrated both human adaptability and the complex consequences of imperial expansion, achievement purchased through warfare, yet ultimately creating foundations for cultural synthesis extending far beyond original military objectives. As gentle twilight settles over Rome, we witness the transformation of a young man who would reshape civilization itself. Picture Gaius Octavius, barely 18 summers old, receiving news of his great uncle Caesar's assassination. Listen to the whispered conversations in quiet rooms as he contemplates whether to claim his inheritance, not merely wealth, but the dangerous legacy of a murdered dictator. Picture the second triumvirate forming like storm clouds over the Mediterranean. Octavius, Mark Antony, and Lepidus divided the Roman world between them, their agreement sealed with prescription lists, names of senators condemned to death for political necessity. Listen to the scratching of styluses marking doomed men, including the great orator Cicero, whose hands and head would soon adorn the rostra where he'd once spoken against tyranny. The Battle of Philippi settled old scores. Picture the plains of Macedonia, where Brutus and Cassius, Caesar's assassins, met their final defeat. Listen to the clash of armies as republican dreams died with their champions. Yet victory brought new divisions. The victorious triumvirs now faced each other across an empire too vast for shared rule. Picture Octavius consolidating power in the West, while Antony indulged Eastern luxuries. The young heir demonstrated patient calculation, building alliances with traditional Roman families, presenting himself as defender of ancestral values against Eastern decadence. His propaganda campaign portrayed Antony as corrupted by Egyptian influence, enslaved to Cleopatra's exotic charms. Listen to the preparation for final conflict between old allies. Ships gathered in harbors while soldiers sharpened weapons, understanding that Mediterranean control hung in balance. At Actium, Octavius's naval forces, commanded by Agrippa, faced Antony's eastern fleet. Picture the morning mist rising as two visions of Roman future faced each other across gray waters. Victory came through strategic brilliance rather than pure force. Picture Cleopatra's sudden withdrawal with her squadron, taking Antony with her. Their departure left remaining forces demoralized, resistance crumbling like sand castles before advancing tide. Octavius had won not just battle, but Roman world's political future. Picture triumphant Octavius addressing the Senate in 27 before our era. Instead of claiming dictatorial powers openly, he announced restoration of republican government, offering to return extraordinary authorities to Senate and people. Listen to carefully orchestrated protests from senators, their theatrical appeals for him to maintain leadership, official bestowal of the title Augustus, meaning revered one. The Principate emerged through this careful fiction. Picture Augustus maintaining republican forms while holding real power through tribunician authority and provincial command. Traditional offices continued, senators debated policy, yet final decisions rested with the princeps, first citizen. This balance preserved dignity for aristocratic sensibilities while ensuring effective governance. Listen to construction sounds throughout Rome as Augustus transformed the capital. Public works provided employment while demonstrating imperial magnificence. The Campus Martius bloomed with monuments, theaters, baths, porticos creating public spaces for citizen enjoyment. I found Rome brick and left it marble, became his famous boast. Picture the Pax Romana emerging from careful frontier management. Augustus preferred diplomatic solutions to military expansion, establishing client kingdoms beyond direct provincial control. Watch Rhine fortifications being strengthened, Danube frontier organized systematically, eastern boundaries negotiated with Parthian kings. Strategic pragmatism replaced expansionist ambition. Economic prosperity flourished under stable administration. Picture merchant ships arriving at Ostia with grain from Egypt, wine from Spain, luxury goods from distant Asia. Trade routes secured through imperial protection created commercial networks spanning continents. Standardized currency enabled transactions from Britain to Mesopotamia. Listen to poets reciting in gilded halls as cultural patronage reached unprecedented heights. Virgil's Aeneid connected Augustus to Troy's legendary survivors, creating origin mythology supporting imperial authority. Horace's lyrics celebrated simple pleasures and moral values, while Ovid's works explored love's complexities, until political missteps earned him exile. Picture religious revival, carefully orchestrated to support imperial stability. Ancient temples restored, traditional ceremonies revived, new priesthoods established. The imperial cult developed gradually, honoring Rome and Augustus's genius rather than deifying the living emperor directly. Religious unification proceeded through revival rather than innovation. Administrative reforms created professional bureaucracy. Picture provincial governors selected for competence rather than political connections, their terms regulated, conduct monitored through imperial oversight. Legal reforms standardized justice across territories, while census data enabled systematic taxation and resource management. Listen to military reorganization, establishing professional standing armies. Veteran colonies in frontier regions created reserves while spreading Roman culture. The Praetorian Guard protected imperial person, though Augustus carefully balanced their privileges against potential political threats. Military loyalty shifted toward commander-in-chief rather than abstract republican ideals. Picture succession arrangements, revealing Augustus's deepest concern. Without male heir, he adopted Tiberius, his stepson, after preferred choices died prematurely. Listen to careful preparation for transition, sharing tribunician power, co-sponsoring legislation, managing public appearances. Yet Tiberius's reserved personality differed markedly from Augustus's calculated charm. Family tragedies marked Augustus's private life. Picture imperial dinners where conversation carefully avoided painful subjects, Julia's exile for adultery, grandson's early deaths, Tiberius's reluctant elevation. Personal sorrows contrasted sharply with public triumphs, reminding us that emperors faced human sufferings alongside political challenges. Social legislation attempted moral restoration through family values. Picture laws encouraging marriage, penalizing adultery, rewarding large families. These measures reflected genuine belief that moral decline threatened political stability. Though enforcement proved problematic, they demonstrated imperial concern, extending beyond purely political matters. Listen to provincial integration proceeding through careful cultural diplomacy. Local elites received citizenship, traditional customs respected when politically acceptable, Romanization encouraged through education and intermarriage. The empire evolved from conquered territories toward integrated commonwealth, though regional identities persisted within Roman framework. Picture Augustus's final years spent managing succession and preserving achievements. His res gestae, inscribed throughout the empire, provided official account of accomplishments, territorial extent, military victories, public benefactions, religious restorations. This testament demonstrated care for historical legacy alongside immediate political concerns. Death came in 14 of our era, at age 76. Picture the deathbed scene in Nola. Family gathered, last instructions given, final attempt at humor, asking whether he'd played his part well in life's comedy. Immediate deification followed, establishing precedent for imperial sanctification while beginning Tiberius's reluctant reign. Picture archaeological remains revealing Augustan transformation's physical evidence. Foundation stones of forums, fragments of decorative programs, architectural innovations combining Greek artistic refinement with Roman engineering practicality. Material culture demonstrates cultural synthesis supporting political integration. Listen to historians debating Augustus's constitutional innovations. Republican institutions preserved while imperial power concentrated, a balance maintaining traditional forms while creating unprecedented authority. This system would endure centuries, adapting to different personalities and circumstances while preserving essential governmental structures. Picture cultural diffusion proceeding through Augustan settlements. Veterans colonizing distant provinces, Latin spreading through administration, educational systems transmitting classical knowledge. Roman identity evolved from ethnic specificity toward cultural participation, creating imperial citizenship transcending geographical origins. As moonlight illuminates diplomatic correspondence and architectural plans displayed in imperial archives, we recognize sustained planning behind apparent spontaneity. Picture administrative reform proceeding incrementally, each change building upon earlier developments while avoiding revolutionary disruption. In our next chapter, we shall witness how Augustus's institutional creation responded to personalities markedly different from its founder. The Julio-Claudian dynasty tested whether systematic governance could survive individual quirks and excesses. Picture now the Augustan settlement achieving its creator's primary goal, governmental stability, enabling cultural flourishing through peaceful succession. Listen to bureaucratic machinery functioning independently of personal rulership, legal frameworks protecting citizens, regardless of imperial temperament, military professionalism, ensuring frontier security through institutional discipline. Dream of political innovation, emerging through gradual evolution rather than sudden revolution, old forms preserved while new functions develop within traditional frameworks. Sleep peacefully, knowing that Augustus demonstrated how careful institutional building creates enduring stability, transcending individual leadership, how cultural synthesis emerges through patient integration, how lasting change often operates through preservation rather than destruction. Rest in contemplation of pragmatic idealism. Augustus balanced visionary goals with practical limitations, creating governmental structures flexible enough to accommodate human imperfection while strong enough to maintain civilizational continuity. May his example inspire measured progress, guided by accumulated wisdom rather than radical experimentation. As evening shadows lengthen across the Palatine Hill, we witness the test of Augustus's creation through a dynasty whose members varied wildly in character. Picture Tiberius in 14 of our era, reluctantly assuming power he'd never sought, his military competence overshadowed by personal melancholy. Listen to the Senate's hesitant proceedings as this experienced general, now emperor, attempted to genuinely restore senatorial authority. Picture Tiberius's early years of competent administration. Finances stabilized, frontiers secured, provincial governance improved through careful oversight. Yet his desire for privacy conflicted with imperial visibility requirements. Listen to the whispered conversations as he withdrew increasingly to Capri, governing through letters while Rome buzzed with rumors about his mysterious island retreat. The influence of Sejanus, Praetorian prefect, grew dangerous during this imperial absence. Picture him moving through Rome's streets, building networks, eliminating potential rivals through carefully orchestrated accusations. Listen to the dramatic Senate session where Tiberius's letter began praising Sejanus, then suddenly turned accusatory, ending with guards arresting the prefect whom senators moments before had expected to see elevated. Picture paranoia spreading like infection through Roman society. Treason trials multiplied as Tiberius, isolated on Capri, increasingly suspected conspiracies everywhere. Listen to noble families gathering at dawn, uncertain which members might face arrest, their conversations careful to avoid any phrase potentially construed as seditious. The reign that began with promise ended in fear. Caligula's accession brought initial relief. Picture the young prince, nicknamed Little Boots by Rhine soldiers, arriving in Rome to genuine celebration. His early months fulfilled expectations. Imprisoned restored, exiles recalled, gladiatorial games and public spectacles less lavishly funded. Listen to crowds cheering a return to active, visible imperial leadership. Yet something shifted dramatically after Caligula's illness, 8 months into his reign. Picture the transformation. Theatrical exhibitions becoming increasingly bizarre, declarations of divinity shocking traditional sensibilities, economic profligacy draining treasury surpluses. Listen to the emperor demanding senators acknowledge his godhood, forcing patrician families to endure humiliating ceremonies honoring his horse as potential consul. Picture the conspiracy forming quietly in palace corridors. Cassius Chaerea, repeatedly humiliated by Caligula's mockery, coordinated with other Praetorian officers. On January 24th, 41 of our era, they struck in a narrow palace passage. Listen to the silence following violence, as guards suddenly confronted their duty to protect an emperor they'd killed. Claudius emerged accidentally from hiding behind palace curtains. Picture this stammering, limping scholar, previously dismissed as harmless due to physical disabilities, suddenly proclaimed emperor by soldiers needing justification for their actions. His unexpected competence surprised everyone, demonstrating how appearance could disguise ability. Listen to construction sounds throughout Claudius's reign as he undertook Systematic improvement projects. Picture new aqueducts bringing fresh water, harbor developments at Ostia, increasing commercial capacity, judicial reforms, streamlining legal procedures. His attention to administrative detail compensated for lack of military glamour. The conquest of Britain marked Claudius's greatest achievement. Picture invasion preparations, ships assembled, supplies calculated, siege equipment designed for unknown conditions. Listen to reports arriving in Rome describing successful landings, native resistance overcome through superior organization, tribal chiefs submitting to imperial authority. This expansion provided military glory, legitimizing accidental rule. Picture domestic intrigue, complicating administrative success. His wife Messalina's public scandals culminated in actually marrying another man while remaining empress. Listen to the confrontation where Claudius finally acknowledged behavior even imperial tolerance couldn't ignore, ordering her execution with reluctance befitting personal attachment despite political necessity. Agrippina the Younger, his niece, became Claudius's fourth wife through calculated ambition. Picture her maneuvering her son Nero into succession position, employing influence to marginalize Claudius's own son, Britannicus. Still listen to court politics shifting toward future arrangements, present authority gradually ceding to anticipated transitions. Nero's accession at 17 fulfilled Agrippina's planning. Picture the Golden Quinquennium, beginning hopefully under guidance from philosopher Seneca and Praetorian prefect Burrus. Listen to Senate sessions where consultation seemed genuinely restored, cultural patronage flourishing, fiscal responsibility maintained through experienced advisors. Artistic ambitions increasingly dominated Nero's attention. Picture theatrical performances where emperor appeared on stage, shocking senators who considered such public display beneath imperial dignity. Listen to competitions where officials carefully ensured imperial victory, understanding that honest criticism would prove dangerous. Picture the gradual elimination of restraining influences. Britannica died suspiciously. Agrippina's controlling influence ended through murder. Seneca and Burrus lost authority through calculated marginalization. Listen to the empire continuing functionally, while its center grew increasingly theatrical and arbitrary. The Great Fire of 64 presented both disaster and opportunity. Picture Rome burning while Nero reportedly composed dramatic recitations about Troy's destruction. Listen to relief efforts proceeding efficiently despite imperial distraction, emergency housing provided, food distribution maintained. Yet architectural plans for the Domus Aurea revealed grandiose personal ambitions emerging from public catastrophe. Picture Christian persecution following fire accusations. Traditional historians claim Nero scapegoated the new religion, though evidence suggests persecution remained limited. Listen to descriptions of arena spectacles where condemned faced lions, their suffering transforming legal punishment into entertainment. Such displays revealed imperial cruelty, regardless of victims' actual guilt. Provincial rebellions reflected imperial attention focused inward. Picture Judea erupting in religious warfare, Boudicca's British revolt destroying Roman settlements, Spanish and Gallic governors preparing opposition. Listen to reports reaching Rome describing military challenges, while emperor concentrated on artistic competitions in Greece. Picture the final conspiracy forming among provincial commanders. When Galba declared against Nero, Military support evaporated rapidly. Listen to the emperor's theatrical response, quoting Greek tragedy even facing death. On June 9th, 68 of our era, he committed suicide, ending Julio-Claudian rule with characteristic dramatic flair. Picture the aftermath examining institutional resilience. Despite individual excesses, governmental machinery continued functioning. Provincial administration maintained order, law courts operated, trade networks persisted. Listen to bureaucratic continuity preserving civilization despite political turmoil. The dynasty's failures illuminated systemic problems. Picture succession mechanisms lacking clear rules, military loyalty dependent on personal relationships, senatorial authority eroded through precedent. Listen to political theorists later analyzing how individual character interacted with institutional structures. Picture cultural achievements persisting alongside political drama. Architectural innovations, literary productions, legal developments proceeded independently of imperial personality. Listen to artistic creation continuing through changing patronage, demonstrating cultural resilience, transcending political instability. Social transformations accelerated during this period. Picture citizenship expanding geographically, class distinctions evolving, economic opportunities emerging through urban growth. Listen to demographic changes creating societal pressures requiring institutional adaptation regardless of imperial direction. Military organization demonstrated remarkable stability despite political upheaval. Picture frontier garrisons maintaining discipline, provincial armies following command structures, veterans settled in colonies, preserving Roman culture. Listen to training exercises continuing unchanged, tactical developments emerging through practical experience. Picture religious diversity expanding throughout empire, mystery cults attracting urban populations, Eastern deities gaining Western adherents, Judaism spreading beyond traditional boundaries. Listen to theological debates in marketplaces, philosophical schools adapting classical thought to contemporary concerns. As starlight illuminates ruins and monuments equally, we recognize how institutions outlasted personalities. Picture archaeological remains revealing continuity beneath political turbulence, roads maintained, aqueducts functioning, public buildings serving communities regardless of imperial identity. The Julio-Claudian experience demonstrated both imperial systems' strengths and vulnerabilities. Picture subsequent dynasties learning from these precedents, adapting succession mechanisms, balancing individual authority with institutional continuity. Listen to historians debating whether systematic governance could truly constrain arbitrary personality. In our next chapter, we witness the year of 4 emperors testing institutional resilience through rapid succession. Picture civil war threatening imperial continuity while bureaucratic machinery preserves essential functions. Picture now the complex legacy of tyranny and achievement intertwined. Listen to echoes of individual excess balanced against administrative competence, cultural patronage despite political instability, societal evolution proceeding through personal drama. Dream of systems transcending operators, institutions preserving civilization through individual failings, human nature's complexity, requiring governmental flexibility rather than rigid perfection. Sleep peacefully, knowing that societies endure through accumulated wisdom rather than depending on perfect leadership, that cultural continuity emerges through institutional resilience rather than personal virtue. As winter shadows grow long across a fractured empire, we witness a year that would test the very foundations of imperial rule. Picture January of 69, when Galba's stern governance and financial parsimony finally pushed military patience beyond breaking point. Listen to restless conversations in Germanic camps where soldiers whispered about unpaid bonuses and unrewarded loyalty. Picture Otho in Lusitania calculating his moment with careful precision. His promises of generous donatives reached Praetorian ears through careful intermediaries, their whispered assurances contrasting sharply with Galba's austere declarations. On January 15th, the conspiracy moved like a swift tide through Rome's streets, guards escorting their chosen emperor toward his destiny. Listen to the brief violence in the Forum as Galba met his end. Yet notice how quickly normalcy returned. Markets reopened, administrative offices resumed function, life continuing beneath political turbulence. Picture Otho proclaiming himself emperor with traditional ceremonies, respecting forms, even while revolution proceeded through military force. The Rhine legions had already declared for Vitellius on New Year's Day, their decision sending ripples across northern frontiers. Picture winter camps buzzing with preparation as veteran soldiers prepared for civil war. Their commander, Aulus Vitellius, possessed neither military genius nor political sophistication, yet offered generous promises and familiar leadership. Picture the Alpine crossing as winter yielded to spring. Vitellius's armies moved with disciplined purpose, despite challenging terrain, their 90,000 men representing formidable force. Listen to reports reaching Rome, describing organized advance, Othonian positions, probed carefully by experienced commanders. At Bedriacum, the armies clashed in northern Italy's fertile plains. Picture morning mist lifting to reveal battle formations, veteran legions facing each other across fields that would soon bear witness to fratricidal combat. Listen to the final charge's terrible sound, not foreign enemies meeting, but Romans killing Romans. Otho's defeat demonstrated how internal conflicts differed from external wars. Picture his dignified decision to commit suicide rather than prolong civil bloodshed. His death speech, urging soldiers to accept new leadership for empire's welfare, revealed unexpected nobility in political crisis. Listen to armies' respectful silence as their 3-month emperor chose principle over survival. Picture Vitellius entering Rome with theatrical excess that shocked traditional sensibilities. His massive size, transported in elaborate litter, presented stark contrast to customary imperial dignity. Listen to banquet preparations echoing through palace halls as administration gave way to prolonged celebration. 6 months of governmental dysfunction followed while eastern provinces observed carefully. Picture Vespasian in Judea, methodically concluding siege operations while considering imperial possibilities. His troops, battle-hardened through sustained campaign, possessed military effectiveness combined with provincial support networks. Listen to diplomatic messages crossing between Syria, Egypt, and Danubian provinces as Eastern Alliance formed. Unlike previous usurpations, based primarily on military support, Vespasian's movement represented coordinated provincial response to Western chaos. Picture December crisis as Vitellius's supporters battled advancing Flavian forces in Rome itself. Urban warfare created unprecedented scenes, citizens trapped between competing armies, public buildings becoming fortified positions, normal life suspended while empire's fate hung in balance. The Capitoline temples burning during street fighting carried terrible symbolism beyond material damage. Picture ancient sanctuary of Jupiter, witness to countless triumphs, consumed by civil conflict. Listen to popular dismay as traditional religious center became casualty of political struggle. Vitellius's death ended a year of remarkable constitutional stress. Picture the last moments of imperial pretension, defeated ruler attempting escape disguised as common citizen, his massive frame recognizable despite attempts at concealment. His execution marked practical conclusion rather than moral resolution. Picture administrative continuity emerging from political chaos. Civil servants maintained records, provincial governors sustained local authority, military discipline preserved frontier security. Listen to governmental machinery functioning despite rapid leadership changes, institutional resilience demonstrated through individual crises. Vespasian arrived in Rome during 70, intentionally delayed while others established order. Picture his entrance emphasizing competent administration over theatrical display, practical expertise rather than dramatic gesture. His provincial background and military reputation suggested substance rather than showmanship. Listen to restoration proceeding through methodical attention to detail. Picture financial recovery through careful taxation policy, public works resuming under imperial direction, building programs providing employment while demonstrating governmental stability. Military reforms instituted by Vespasian addressed succession crises' underlying causes. Picture reorganized legion deployment, preventing excessive regional loyalties, command rotations limiting personal armies, Praetorian Guard reconstituted with carefully selected personnel. Systematic changes emerged from practical lessons rather than theoretical innovation. Picture Colosseum construction beginning on Nero's private lake site. This architectural transformation symbolized returning public spaces to citizens, entertainment, replacing imperial self-indulgence. Listen to construction sounds demonstrating governmental competence while providing visible monument to restored stability. Provincial integration accelerated as Eastern support received appropriate recognition. Picture educated Greeks, Syrian administrators, Egyptian specialists entering imperial service. Geographic diversity strengthened rather than threatened imperial identity through merit-based advancement. Listen to Senate proceedings where traditional dignity combined with practical acceptance of imperial realities. Constitutional fiction continued, emperors presented as magistrates rather than absolute rulers, while actual authority concentrated through custom rather than explicit change. Picture Jerusalem's fall in 70 providing tangible victory, legitimizing Flavian rule. Titus returned with temple treasures displayed in triumph, their physical presence demonstrating military success while generating revenue for reconstruction programs. Social consequences extended beyond immediate political resolution. Picture veterans settling throughout Italy, their presence creating demographic shift. Urban populations mixing with provincial immigrants, cultural synthesis proceeding through demographic movement rather than deliberate policy. Listen to religious developments as Eastern cults gained Western adherents through population mobility. Mystery religions spread through military networks, philosophical schools attracted diverse students, traditional practices adapted to cosmopolitan influences. Administrative professionalization emerged from crisis-driven necessity. Picture bureaucratic posts filled through competence rather than political connection. Imperial service becoming professional career rather than aristocratic privilege. Governmental efficiency improved through practical selection rather than ideological reform. Picture economic recovery proceeding systematically through infrastructure investment. Roads repaired, harbors improved, aqueducts extended, public works demonstrating imperial effectiveness while creating tangible benefits. Trade routes secured through military presence enabled commercial prosperity. Listen to legal proceedings where precedent accumulated, establishing practices rather than revolutionary changes. Judicial tradition continued while adapting to imperial context, creating synthesis between republican forms and monarchical reality. Cultural production reflected political stabilization through renewed patronage. Picture artistic workshops receiving imperial commissions, literary figures finding supportive audience, educational institutions receiving governmental attention. Creativity flourished within restored stability rather than despite political uncertainty. Picture succession planning proceeding consciously rather than accidentally. Titus and Domitian prepared for leadership roles through graduated responsibility, practical experience, complementing familial connection. Systematic preparation replaced improvised arrangements. As moonlight illuminates monuments, partially destroyed then reconstructed, we recognize how crisis often catalyzes improvement. Picture archaeological layers, revealing destruction, followed by enhanced rebuilding, temporary damage spurring longer-term enhancement. The year of 4 emperors ultimately strengthened imperial institutions through stress testing. Picture subsequent dynasties benefiting from lessons learned, succession mechanisms refined, provincial balance acknowledged, military organization improved. Crisis produced practical wisdom rather than theoretical ideology. Listen to night sounds in restored forum, merchants preparing next day's commerce, priests conducting evening rituals, citizens moving freely through spaces recently contested by armies. Normal life resumed with perhaps deeper appreciation for political stability's practical benefits. In our next chapter, we witness Trajan's expansion reaching empire's maximum extent while Hadrian consolidates territorial gains. Picture these complementary approaches addressing different aspects of imperial management. Picture now the paradox of constructive crisis, chaos producing innovation, breakdown enabling reorganization, conflict ultimately strengthening rather than destroying institutional foundations. Dream of societies transcending individual ambitions through accumulated wisdom, governmental structures surviving personal dramas through functional resilience. Sleep peacefully, knowing that human institutions often emerge stronger from testing, that temporary disorder frequently precedes enhanced organization, that wisdom earned through difficulty proves more durable than comfort maintained through stagnation. May tomorrow's stability rest upon yesterday's hard lessons. As morning light touches the Danube frontier, we meet 2 emperors who would define Rome's territorial zenith and cultural consolidation. Close your eyes and picture Marcus Ulpius Traianus as he receives news of his elevation in 98, a Spanish soldier whose reign would see the empire reach its greatest extent. Listen to the steady rhythm of his army's march as they prepare for campaigns that would push Roman eagles beyond Augustus's cautious boundaries. Picture Trajan at 45, his bearing reflecting a lifetime of frontier service. Unlike theatrical predecessors, he moved with military precision, his every gesture economical and purposeful. His entrance into Rome deliberately avoided grandeur, walking to the Senate rather than riding in triumph, greeting citizens individually, establishing precedent for accessible rather than remote imperial authority. The Dacian Wars showcased Roman engineering alongside military prowess. Picture the massive bridge across the Danube, its stone piers rising like mountain peaks, wooden spans connecting territories that seemed unconquerable. Listen to thousands of workers laying foundations while legions stood guard, their combined effort creating infrastructure that supported invasion and future administration. Decebalus commanded a kingdom rich in gold and experienced in mountain warfare. Picture his fortifications carved into cliffsides, natural defenses supplemented by ingenious earthworks, warriors trained to exploit terrain advantages. The conflict required innovations, new siege techniques for hill fort warfare, modified shield formations for rough ground, adaptation of classical tactics to mountain conditions. Victory brought unprecedented wealth to Rome. Picture triumphal processions stretching for days, Dacian treasures requiring hundreds of wagons, their gold and silver quantities straining Roman capacity for display. Yet permanent benefits exceeded temporary spectacle, systematic colonization creating prosperous province, mineral wealth funding architectural monuments, strategic position securing eastern frontiers. Trajan's Forum transformed Rome's public spaces. Picture massive construction projects employing thousands, hills leveled to create unprecedented building sites, marble transported from distant provinces, engineering challenges met with systematic problem solving. The forum's markets demonstrated architectural innovation, multiple commercial levels, sophisticated ventilation, integrated storage facilities, creating urban retail space centuries ahead of its time. Eastern expansion represented Trajan's greatest ambition and eventual limitation. Picture his army crossing the Euphrates, advancing through Mesopotamia toward the Persian Gulf, Roman standards reaching territories beyond Alexander's conquests. Temporary victory created maximum imperial extent, yet overextension brought immediate challenges, supply lines stretching beyond sustainable limits, local resistance requiring constant military attention, communication difficulties preventing coordinated administration. Jewish revolts in Cyprus, Egypt, and Cyrenaica demonstrated conquests' secondary effects. Picture simultaneous uprisings coordinated across provinces, existing populations rising against Roman rule while armies campaigned elsewhere. Suppression required redirecting forces from frontier campaigns, revealing how territorial expansion created security vulnerabilities in previously pacified regions. Trajan's death in 117 ended expansion permanently. Picture his final illness at Selinus, consciousness fading while reviewing reports of frontier difficulties, deathbed adoption of Hadrian ensuring succession but acknowledging that consolidation must replace conquest as imperial priority. His column in Rome preserved campaign memories while marking transition from expansion to preservation. Hadrian inherited maximum territorial extent, requiring sustainable administration. Picture him at 41, intellectual rather than purely military, his extensive provincial travels representing genuine attempt to understand imperial diversity through direct observation. Unlike Trajan's frontier focus, Hadrian's journeys emphasized cultural synthesis and administrative efficiency. Construction of Hadrian's Wall epitomized strategic reorientation. Picture 80 Roman miles of stone fortification rising across northern Britain, permanent garrisons established in purpose built forts, infrastructure supporting sustained defensive strategy. The wall acknowledged geographical limits while creating defensible frontier system, explicit abandonment of expansion beyond natural boundaries. The Pantheon's reconstruction demonstrated architectural mastery, combining innovation with tradition. Picture concrete dome spanning unprecedented distances, oculus opening towards celestial observation, interior space achieving geometric perfection while serving religious purpose. Engineering excellence created building that influenced architecture for centuries, proving structural capabilities that modern technology struggles to replicate. Hadrian's villa at Tivoli preserved cultural diversity through architectural quotation. Picture reproductions of famous monuments, Egyptian temples, Greek theaters, Persian gardens, architectural synthesis containing empire's diversity within single estate. The complex represented attempt to maintain cultural plurality through physical preservation, imperial identity that embraced rather than suppressed regional traditions. Bar Kokhba revolt tested Hadrian's preference for cultural accommodation. Picture systematic suppression requiring 3 legions, Jerusalem renamed Aelia Capitolina, Judea redesignated as Syria Palestina. The conflict demonstrated limits when religious nationalism refused cultural integration, military response necessary, despite philosophical preference for peaceful assimilation. Administrative standardization balanced local autonomy with central control. Picture provincial government streamlined through systematic regulation, tax assessment, standardized across territories, legal procedures creating predictable framework for dispute resolution. Bureaucratic innovation enabled efficient administration while respecting regional variations within imperial structure. Hadrian's death in 138 marked transition from expansion to equilibrium. Picture succession carefully arranged. Antoninus Pius adopted with understanding that he would adopt Marcus Aurelius, planning extending imperial stability through multiple generations. Frontier systems stabilized, provincial administration systematized, empire reaching sustainable configuration under philosopher-emperor guidance. As twilight settles over monuments built by these emperors, we recognize complementary approaches to imperial greatness. Picture Trajan's column recording military achievement, Hadrian's Pantheon embodying architectural perfection, both structures testifying to empire's zenith through different expressions of Roman genius. Their combined legacy established territorial and cultural foundations, supporting empire through subsequent challenges. In our next chapter, we'll meet the Antonines, particularly Marcus Aurelius, whose philosophical approach to governance would guide empire through plague, war, and internal pressures. We'll witness how Stoic wisdom confronted practical challenges, maintaining stability during crisis through intellectual discipline combined with administrative competence. But for now, as you prepare for rest, let the geometric perfection of Pantheon's dome guide your thoughts toward tranquility. Picture starlight through oculus marking time's passage with celestial precision, frontier walls securing peaceful sleep, architectural monuments transcending temporal concerns. Sleep well, knowing that empire's peak combined military achievement with cultural synthesis, territorial expansion with artistic creation, conquest with preservation of diverse traditions. As gentle dawn light spreads across the empire, we enter an era remembered as Rome's pinnacle of enlightened governance. Picture Antoninus Pius in 138, accepting power with characteristic reluctance, his 23-year reign demonstrating that imperial greatness could manifest through quiet competence rather than dramatic gesture. Listen to morning reports being read in his modest villa, their contents revealing concerns about provincial tax assessments and frontier garrison rotations rather than conquest or spectacle. At 52, Antoninus possessed patient demeanor, suggesting someone who understood effective administration required attention to detail rather than theatrical innovation. Picture him annotating documents with careful precision, his marginalia revealing practical concerns about road maintenance and aqueduct repairs. His epithet, pious, reflected devotion to securing Hadrian's deification, demonstrating political skill that operated through traditional frameworks rather than innovative authority. The adoption arrangements securing succession for 2 generations showed unprecedented planning. Picture the ceremony where Antoninus adopted both Lucius Verus and Marcus Aurelius, legal formulas ensuring imperial continuity beyond a single lifetime. Young Marcus, future philosopher emperor, stood witness to constitutional innovations that would shape his understanding of power's responsibilities. Provincial administration reached extraordinary efficiency during Antoninus's reign. Picture governors receiving detailed instructions about local improvements, roads maintained to specified standards, water supplies extended to smaller settlements, judicial procedures streamlined for dispute resolution. His correspondence revealed attention to individual cases, responding personally to petitions about drought relief and inheritance disputes. Economic prosperity generated unprecedented stability. Picture merchant ships arriving at Ostia, their holds filled with Egyptian grain, Syrian spices, British tin, Spanish silver. Trade networks functioned with mechanical precision, commercial documentation standardized across provinces, legal frameworks protecting contracts, regardless of participants' origins. Mediterranean commerce operated within reliable parameters, creating predictable profit rather than speculative fortune. Military organization evolved toward professional permanence. Picture veteran settlements along frontier zones, their agricultural communities creating defense in depth while providing retirement security for loyal soldiers. Legionary service attracted provincial populations seeking citizenship, military training offering social advancement within imperial structure. Strategic deployment emphasized frontier strength rather than expansion. Picture Marcus Aurelius during these peaceful decades, his philosophical education continuing alongside practical governance instruction. Stoic principles informed his approach to administrative challenges, private journals reflecting struggle to apply theoretical wisdom to immediate decisions. His meditations, written later during military campaigns, drew foundation from principles formed during Antoninus's mentorship. Religious tolerance characterized imperial policy, traditional practices flourishing alongside newer mystery cults. Picture temple ceremonies throughout provinces, maintaining ancestral traditions, while Eastern deities attracted urban followers through promise of personal salvation. Christianity spread primarily through urban communities, its organization providing social support where civic institutions addressed collective rather than individual needs. Legal development proceeded through systematic precedent accumulation rather than dramatic innovation. Picture Praetorian proceedings, where judicial decisions drew upon accumulated wisdom, established procedures ensuring predictable outcomes. Property rights gained enhanced protection. Family law evolved, addressing changing social conditions. Commercial regulations adapted to expanding trade networks without sacrificing traditional frameworks. Cultural flourishing accompanied political stability. Picture libraries expanding through imperial patronage, rhetorical schools attracting students from distant provinces, artistic workshops producing refined works combining classical proportions with contemporary sensibilities. Educational standards rose as prosperity allowed families greater investment in children's training beyond basic literacy. Picture city planning reaching sophisticated levels as prosperity enabled public works beyond mere maintenance. Forums expanded, incorporating practical improvements, better drainage, enhanced vendor organization, integrated warehouse facilities. Public baths incorporated advanced heating systems. Entertainment venues improved acoustic design. Residential areas received systematic water distribution. Listen to morning salutations in great houses where patron client relationships maintained social cohesion while adapting to imperial scale. Traditional Roman customs persisted within cosmopolitan contexts, provincial aristocrats adopting metropolitan styles while maintaining regional identities. Cultural synthesis proceeded organically through personal relationships rather than official mandate. Picture Antoninus's death in 161, marking transition to more challenging era. His systematic preparation enabled smooth succession, yet emerging problems required different approaches. Marcus Aurelius inherited peace, but faced plague, frontier wars, internal political pressures, testing philosophical principles against immediate necessities. The Antonine Plague struck beginning in 165, devastating populations throughout empire. Picture physicians employing limited medical knowledge against disease whose contagion patterns exceeded contemporary understanding. Social institutions strained maintaining services while losing experienced personnel, imperial administration, adapting procedures, accommodating demographic disruption. Listen to reports from eastern frontiers where Parthian conflict erupted after decades of diplomatic equilibrium. Marcus Aurelius coordinated response while philosophical reflection intensified confronting necessity of warfare. His private writings revealed tension between Stoic principles advocating acceptance and imperial responsibilities demanding aggressive defense. Military campaigns against Germanic tribes demonstrated evolution of frontier threats. Picture tribal confederations demonstrating increased organization, their tactics incorporating lessons learned from observing Roman formations. Imperial response required innovative strategies, mobile reserves supporting static defenses, diplomat engagement complementing military pressure, economic incentives balancing coercive measures. Administrative challenge multiplied as plague and warfare created simultaneous crises. Picture provincial governors receiving contradictory instructions, maintain tax collection despite population decline, sustain military recruitment while preserving agricultural production, enforce legal standards amid social disruption. Marcus Aurelius balanced competing priorities through philosophical framework emphasizing duty over preference. Economic strain required creative solutions beyond traditional responses. Picture imperial treasuries depleted by sustained warfare, while revenue sources contracted through demographic loss. Administrative innovation introduced efficient provisioning, diplomatic arrangements reduced military expenses, systematic economic planning addressed resource allocation challenges previously managed through abundance. Picture Commodus inheriting empires stressed by decade of war and pestilence. His succession fulfilled dynastic expectations, yet personality limitations undermined institutional foundations developed through philosophical guidance. Contrast between father's intellectual discipline and son's theatrical inclinations suggested philosophical training's inadequacy confronting character deficiencies. Legal reforms under Marcus Aurelius reflected philosophical commitment translated into practical legislation. Picture judicial proceedings where slave testimony gained credibility, where family inheritance rights expanded beyond traditional male privilege, where economic contracts included enhanced protections for weaker parties. Stoic principles informed gradual evolution toward individual protection within collective order. Picture late evening in campaign headquarters, where Marcus composed his meditations, philosophical reflection alternating with tactical planning. These private thoughts revealed emperor wrestling with fundamental questions: duty versus desire, necessity versus preference, collective responsibility balanced against individual limitation. Practical wisdom emerged from sustained engagement with immediate challenges. Cultural production during this period balanced traditional forms with innovative content. Picture artists incorporating frontier experience into classical contexts, poets addressing contemporary warfare while maintaining epic conventions, historians documenting current events through established narrative frameworks. Creative synthesis preserved traditional excellence while addressing changed circumstances. Educational emphasis shifted pragmatically as warfare demanded practical skills alongside classical training. Picture rhetoric instruction, including military applications, mathematical education addressing engineering challenges, philosophical study emphasizing ethical frameworks for difficult decisions. Academic curriculum adapted without abandoning foundations developed during peaceful prosperity. Listen to Senate proceedings where traditional deference combined with practical independence, legislative activity increasing as imperial attention focused on frontier campaigns. Constitutional evolution proceeded through custom rather than formal change, institutional adaptation enabling governance continuity despite prolonged imperial absence from capital. Picture succession planning under stress as Commodus demonstrated character limitations, suggesting philosophical preparations inadequacy for unsuitable personalities. Marcus Aurelius maintained family succession despite private reservations. Understanding political stability required dynastic continuity, even when individual merit counseled alternative arrangements. Religious developments reflected crisis responses, as traditional practices seemed insufficient addressing unprecedented challenges. Picture increased interest in personal salvation religions, philosophical schools, attracting followers seeking meaning amid apparent cosmic disorder, mystery cults promising individual protection when collective institutions appeared inadequate. As starlight illuminates monuments completed during Antonine prosperity, we recognize Golden Age's dependence on capable individual leadership rather than institutional innovation. Picture architectural perfection achieved through accumulated prosperity, cultural flowering enabled by extended peace, administrative efficiency reaching sustainable levels through systematic attention. Yet this period also demonstrated how external pressures test philosophical governance, how theoretical wisdom requires practical adaptation confronting immediate challenges. Marcus Aurelius embodied this tension, emperor philosopher struggling to apply Stoic principles while making decisions affecting millions during plague and war. In our next chapter, we'll witness the 3rd century crisis where accumulated pressures overwhelmed individual capacity for resolution, requiring institutional innovation beyond personal character to maintain imperial continuity. We'll see how systemic challenges demanded structural rather than merely philosophical responses. But for now, as you prepare for rest, let the measured wisdom of Marcus Aurelius guide your thoughts toward tranquility. Picture philosophical reflection balanced against practical necessity, theoretical principle tested through immediate challenge, wisdom earned through difficulty rather than comfort. Dream of golden ages sustained through daily attention rather than dramatic gesture, of prosperity maintained through systematic rather than spectacular effort. Sleep peacefully knowing that greatness often lies in steady competence rather than brilliant innovation. As storm clouds gather over the empire's horizon, we enter a half century that would test every foundation Augustus had laid. Picture the year 235, when Alexander Severus fell to mutinous soldiers, his death unleashing chaos that made earlier succession crises seem orderly. Listen to the distant thunder of civil war as more than 50 emperors would claim the purple in 50 years, their reigns measured in months rather than decades. Listen to veteran legions arguing in camps from Britain to Syria, their loyalty shifting like wind direction. Traditional succession mechanisms shattered, replaced by naked military power. Picture generals measuring army strength against imperial ambition, each calculation bringing empire closer to dissolution. The Principate, carefully constructed to balance power, collapsed into something resembling military dictatorship. Watch the phenomenon of barracks emperors emerge, soldiers elevated directly from ranks to purple. Picture Maximinus Thrax, the giant Thracian whose limited education mattered less than battlefield prowess, governing through military decree rather than administrative expertise. These commanders understood army management, but struggled with civilian complexities spanning 3 continents. Economic collapse accelerated with each succession crisis. Picture merchants hesitating before major transactions, their calculations complicated by currency debasement that made yesterday's prices meaningless today. Silver content in coins dropped from near purity to bare traces, creating inflation that devastated savings and disrupted trade networks. Workers demanded payment in goods rather than worthless currency. Listen to hammers work in overtime in imperial mints, producing coins whose metal value barely justified production costs. Picture government officials requisitioning supplies without adequate compensation, farmers abandoning lands whose yields couldn't meet tax demands. Cities witnessed population flight as monetary economies collapsed into subsistence agriculture. Plague struck again in the 250s, adding medical catastrophe to political chaos. Picture empty neighborhoods in major cities, their residents fled or dead, municipal services failing as experienced workers perished. The Cyprian plague killed indiscriminately soldiers, administrators, farmers, merchants, removing human resources essential for imperial function. Listen to funeral pyres burning continuously, their smoke rising like prayers to indifferent gods. Traditional death rituals abbreviated through necessity, mass graves replacing individual burials, religious ceremonies overwhelmed by mortality's sheer volume. Social institutions struggled maintaining basic services while losing critical personnel to disease. Barbarian pressure intensified simultaneously across every frontier, suggesting coordinated response to imperial weakness. Picture Alemanni crossing frozen Rhine in winter campaigns, Goths pressing Danubian defenses, tribal confederations demonstrating new organizational sophistication. Multiple threats prevented concentration of Roman response, frontier commanders operating with limited resources while awaiting reinforcement. Watch civilian populations evacuating frontier zones, their ox carts creating muddy channels on roads designed for military traffic. Picture fortified cities receiving refugee streams, their walls hastily expanded, food supplies calculated against unknown siege duration. Provincial boundaries blurred as populations shifted, seeking safety behind remaining military strength. Religious uncertainty reflected broader social anxiety. Traditional temple ceremonies poorly attended, their rituals seeming ineffective against cascading disasters. Christianity spread through urban populations, seeking community when civic institutions failed. Mystery cults offered personal salvation as collective imperial identity provided diminishing protection. Picture competing religious voices in marketplaces, Christian preachers, Mithraic initiations, traditional priesthoods, each promising security through different spiritual means. This religious diversity, previously celebrated as imperial tolerance, suggested dangerous division when unity seemed survival's prerequisite. Territorial fragmentation emerged through separatist movements. Picture Postumus establishing Gallic Empire in 260, controlling Britain, Gaul, and Hispania independently from Rome. Simultaneously, Zenobia's Palmyrene Empire commanded Egypt, Syria, and eastern territories. Roman authority contracted to Italy and nearby provinces. Listen to diplomatic negotiations between competing power centers, their correspondents maintaining imperial terminology while acknowledging practical independence. Administrative continuity preserved through regional solutions when central government proved ineffective. Empire's unity dissolved into manageable territorial units. Military adaptation proceeded through necessity rather than planning. Picture traditional legionary structure modified for frontier defense. Smaller, mobile units responding rapidly to raids, heavier cavalry countering barbarian mounted warfare, specialized formations addressing geographical challenges. Army evolution reflected practical adaptation to sustained crisis. Watch veteran centurions training recruits with greater urgency, their traditional drill modified by recent combat experience. Picture equipment standardization, yielding to regional variation as manufacturing centers operated independently. Military efficiency improved through practical modification, despite declining central coordination. Administrative innovation emerged from crisis management. Picture provincial commanders assuming responsibilities traditionally reserved for Rome, their decisions creating precedents that institutionalized decentralization. Regional self sufficiency developed through necessity when imperial support proved unreliable. Bureaucratic flexibility increased survival chances. Listen to local magistrates adapting Roman procedures for immediate challenges, their solutions creating hybrid administration, blending classical forms with emergency requirements. Picture communication networks using private merchants and religious organizations when military couriers couldn't reach destinations. Administrative survival required improvisation rather than rigid adherence to tradition. Tax collection militarized as civilian authority weakened. Picture municipal leaders adopting military dress while performing fiscal duties, their traditional authority reinforced by direct military connection. Police and taxation functions merged, creating more effective local government while blurring civilian military distinctions. Watch tax assessment becoming more systematic under pressure, documentation improving as resources became scarcer. Picture careful inventories of agricultural production, urban workshop registration, trade transaction monitoring. Crisis demanded efficient resource utilization, leading to oversight that characterized later imperial administration. Cultural production persisted despite material challenges. Picture poets adapting classical meters for contemporary warfare themes, artists working with reduced materials, architects designing practical fortifications rather than decorative monuments. Creative adaptation maintained cultural continuity while addressing immediate survival needs. Listen to intellectual debates continuing in reduced circumstances, their participants preserving philosophical discourse while acknowledging changed realities. Picture libraries transferring essential manuscripts to safer locations, scholars copying texts despite material shortages. Cultural transmission required conscious effort rather than automatic continuity. Regional identity strengthened as imperial unity weakened. Picture provincial populations developing distinct characteristics, Latin evolving toward Romance languages, local customs blending with Roman practices. Cultural diversification created resilience through adaptation while threatening traditional imperial uniformity. Watch architectural styles incorporating local materials and defensive requirements rather than metropolitan fashions. Picture art reflecting regional experiences, literature addressing local challenges. Empire's diversity, previously contained within unity, emerged as independent cultural development. Economic innovation appeared through necessity. Picture barter systems replacing monetary transactions, local currencies emerging when imperial coinage failed, commercial networks bypassing traditional trade routes. Survival required economic creativity when classical systems proved inadequate. Listen to merchants developing alternative payment methods, communities creating mutual aid organizations, workers organizing protective associations. Social cooperation increased when governmental support diminished, creating community resilience through collective action. Religious transformation accelerated toward Christianity's eventual dominance. Picture organized Christian communities providing effective crisis response when traditional institutions failed. Church administration demonstrated efficiency, surpassing secular bureaucracy, creating infrastructure that survived political dissolution. Watch charitable networks distributing resources during emergencies, communication systems maintaining contact across hostile territories, community leadership stepping forward when civic authorities proved absent. Christianity's organizational success reflected practical utility rather than merely theological appeal. Picture Diocletian's elevation in 284. His systematic approach, studying accumulated crises, requiring comprehensive solutions. His eventual reforms would address military organization, administrative division, economic regulation, religious policy, all problems identified through 3rd century experience. As winter stars illuminate territories, fragmented yet adapting, we recognize that crisis often generates innovation. Picture urban populations creating local solutions, provincial communities developing self-sufficiency, military units adapting tactics for survival. Resilience emerged through forced experimentation with traditional structures. In our next chapter, we'll witness Diocletian's comprehensive reforms, attempting systematic solutions for accumulated problems. We'll see how crisis-driven innovation became permanent institutional change, creating administrative frameworks supporting empire through transformation rather than preservation of classical forms. But for now, as you prepare for sleep, let resilience through adaptation guide your thoughts toward rest. Picture communities maintaining civilization despite systemic failure, individuals creating solutions when institutions proved inadequate, society reorganizing for survival while preserving essential values. Dream of crisis, generating innovation, challenge creating strength, temporary breakdown enabling permanent improvement. Sleep peacefully knowing that human adaptability transcends institutional collapse, that societies survive through creative rather than rigid response, that tomorrow's stability often emerges from today's necessary improvisation. As morning light breaks across a transformed empire, we meet the architect of Rome's most revolutionary administrative experiment. Picture Diocletian in 2884, a Dalmatian officer whose systematic approach would reshape imperial governance. His solutions emerged not from theory, but from 30 years observing crisis firsthand, each reform addressing problems that had nearly destroyed civilization itself. Picture him studying maps spanning 3 continents, measuring distances military forces could realistically control, calculating administrative capacities of single ruler systems. Listen to his methodical questioning of advisors. How long did messages take reaching distant provinces? What tax revenues justified defensive costs? How might succession prevent civil war? Diocletian approached imperial crisis like engineering challenge, seeking permanent solutions rather than temporary expedients. The Tetrarchy's creation in 293 represented practical recognition that empire had grown beyond single-person control. Picture the ceremony elevating Maximian to co-Augustus, then selecting Constantius and Galerius as Caesars. Division acknowledged reality rather than planning ideal. 4 rulers governing manageable territories, coordinating through established protocol rather than improvised consultation. Listen to communication rhythms establishing between capitals, Nicomedia, Mediolanum, Trier, Sirmium. Regular correspondence maintained policy coherence while enabling regional response to immediate challenges. Picture messengers following precisely calculated routes, their schedules ensuring predictable contact between separated power centers. Administrative precision replaced charismatic authority as imperial organizational principle. Military reforms addressed succession crisis at its source. Picture the comitatenses, mobile field armies, training separately from frontier troops, their elite status creating professional pride, transcending regional loyalties. The Limitanei border guards established permanent settlements, their families creating committed presence, combining military function with civilian stability. Watch standardized drill procedures being implemented across tetrarchic territories, equipment specifications ensuring interoperability between distant units. Listen to coordinated recruitment filling predetermined quotas rather than responding to immediate emergencies. Professional military development replaced desperate improvisation characteristic of previous decades. Economic stabilization required comprehensive intervention rather than incremental adjustments. Picture the edict on maximum prices attempting to control inflation through regulatory authority, thousands of items listed with mandatory pricing. The measure's limited success demonstrated economic complexity, yet represented serious governmental response to monetary chaos that had destabilized previous administrations. Listen to hammers in reformed mints producing standardized currency with guaranteed silver content. Picture tax assessors conducting systematic property evaluations, their records documenting wealth across empire with unprecedented precision. The capitatio system attempted revenue predictability through detailed documentation, administrative thoroughness addressing fiscal confusion. Provincial reorganization doubled administrative units, creating territories manageable for individual governors. Picture new boundaries drawn along geographical and ethnic lines. Administrative efficiency prioritized over traditional provincial identities. The diocese system grouped smaller provinces under vicars answering to praetorian prefects, creating hierarchical accountability that balanced local autonomy with central coordination. Watch bureaucratic expansion, providing employment for educated classes while ensuring governmental presence throughout empire. Listen to administrative correspondence, flowing through organized channels, each level screening and summarizing information for superior review. Professional civil service developed institutional memory, transcending individual emperor tenure. Religious policy represented Diocletian's most controversial innovation. Picture the Great Persecution beginning in 303, Christian scriptures publicly burned, churches systematically demolished, clergy arrested for refusing traditional observances. Unlike spontaneous violence, this represented calculated attempt to restore religious uniformity, considered essential for political stability. Listen to theological arguments in imperial councils debating religious unity's relationship to political cohesion. Watch regional variation in persecution intensity, enthusiastic implementation in some provinces, moderate enforcement elsewhere, local social conditions determining actual practice. State religious policy confronted limits when commanding private conviction. Court ceremonial innovations reflected growing imperial distance from republican traditions. Picture elaborate protocols surrounding emperor access, throne room rituals combining Roman dignity with Persian-influenced grandeur. Dress codes distinguished ranks more precisely than earlier custom, creating visual hierarchy reinforcing administrative structure. Imperial mystique replaced accessible leadership as governing philosophy. Cultural synthesis proceeded despite religious tensions. Picture architectural blending, Roman engineering with Eastern aesthetic influences, artistic production combining classical traditions with contemporary innovations. Literary output adapted ancient forms for addressing current challenges, intellectual life continuing through institutional patronage despite religious controversies. Listen to provincial dialects incorporating administrative vocabulary while maintaining local character. Watch educational curricula emphasizing practical skills alongside traditional rhetorical training. Cultural preservation proceeded through adaptation rather than rigid conservatism, diversity contained within common administrative framework. Succession planning represented Diocletian's most ambitious reform attempt. Picture the voluntary abdication ceremony in 305, constitutional precedent replacing military coup as transfer mechanism. Diocletian and Maximian simultaneously resigned, Constantius and Galerius advancing to Augustus status while appointing new Caesars. Listen to retirement speeches emphasizing institutional continuity over personal authority. Watch former emperors departing for private estates, their withdrawal demonstrating power's temporary nature within reformed system. Constitutional fiction approached reality through systematic implementation rather than theoretical declaration. Picture split palace construction during Diocletian's retirement, its defensive walls enclosing agricultural spaces where former emperor cultivated gardens rather than territories. His personal satisfaction in agricultural labor contrasted sharply with imperial grandeur, demonstrating successful transition from absolute power to private contentment rare in Roman history. Tetrarchic breakdown following retirement revealed institutional innovation's limitations without supporting cultural transformation. Picture Constantine and Maxentius competing for control, religious differences exacerbating political rivalries. Familial succession reasserted itself over constitutional mechanism, traditional patterns overcoming administrative experiment. Listen to armies declaring loyalty to individuals rather than offices, regional interests superseding coordinated policy. Watch territorial divisions hardening into permanent separation rather than administrative convenience. Constitutional theory confronted political reality rooted in personal authority and military loyalty. Legacy assessment requires balancing innovation against implementation challenges. Picture administrative divisions proving durable long after tetrarchic system dissolved, diocesan organization surviving political reunification. Legal precedents established through systematic legislation influenced later codification attempts, bureaucratic professionalization creating institutional resilience, transcending individual rulers. Watch ceremonial innovations permanently transforming imperial dignity, religious policies inadvertently strengthening Christian organization through persecution experience, economic measures providing templates for later reform attempts, even failed initiatives generating practical knowledge about governmental limitations. As evening settles over monuments built during administrative revolution, we recognize how crisis necessitates structural rather than personal solutions. Picture Diocletian's split palace standing solid centuries later, its pragmatic design contrasting with earlier imperial self-celebration. Institutional innovations outlasted their creators' intentions, adapting to circumstances beyond original conception. In our next chapter, we'll witness Constantine's religious revolution, watching how Diocletian's administrative framework enabled spiritual transformation while maintaining governmental continuity. We'll see how institutional flexibility permitted cultural development, within preserved structural organization. But for now, as you prepare for rest, let systematic reform's ambitions guide your thoughts toward tranquility. Picture administrative precision, creating predictable order from previous chaos, institutional development transcending individual capability, permanent structure emerging from temporary crisis. Dream of societies organizing for long term sustainability rather than short term survival, innovation proceeding through practical experimentation rather than theoretical planning. Sleep peacefully knowing that human organization adapts through systematic rather than dramatic change, that lasting solutions emerge from careful analysis rather than hasty reaction, that tomorrow's stability builds on today's methodical preparation. As dawn breaks over Milvian Bridge, we witness a transformation that would reshape Western civilization. Picture October 28th, 312, when Constantine faced Maxentius in battle that would determine not only political control, but spiritual direction of the empire. Listen to soldiers painting strange new symbols on shields. The Chiro, the Labarum, marks announcing revolutionary shift in imperial identity. Picture Constantine's dream the previous night, whether divine vision or calculated decision. His army responded methodically to instructions for marking shields with Christian symbols, professional discipline, accommodating religious innovation without questioning command authority. Listen to paintbrushes working through darkness, their rhythm marking boundary between traditional Roman religion and Christian imperial future. Military victory proceeded through familiar tactics despite unprecedented spiritual context. Picture cavalry charges across wooden bridge spans, infantry formations maintaining classical discipline while bearing new religious symbols. Maxentius's army faced defeat whose consequences transcended tactical outcome, their defeat ending last major resistance to Christian sympathetic rule. Listen to Maxentius drowning in Tiber current, his death marking more than individual loss. Picture Constantine entering Rome, deliberately avoiding traditional triumph, his restraint suggesting calculated political transformation rather than spontaneous religious conversion. The Senate's cautious welcome reflected uncertainty about new symbols' implications while recognizing military fait accompli. Religious tolerance emerged gradually rather than through sudden decree. Picture traditional temples continuing operations alongside emerging Christian basilicas, religious diversity maintained through imperial example rather than forced conversion. The Edict of Milan in 313 provided legal framework for religious freedom without mandating Christian adoption. Listen to construction sounds throughout Constantine's reign, churches rising in Rome, basilicas dedicated to martyrs, architectural innovation blending engineering tradition with spiritual purpose. The Lateran Basilica established pattern for imperial Christian building. Monumental scale, rich decoration, public accessibility combined with ceremonial dignity. Administrative continuity supported religious transition. Picture bureaucrats maintaining Diocletian's reformed structures while incorporating Christian influences in official correspondence. Imperial decision-making preserved professional character, regardless of theological content. Experienced officials serving transition through expertise rather than faith requirements. Listen to theological debates echoing through council chambers as bishops gathered addressing doctrinal disputes. The Council of Nicaea in 325 demonstrated Constantine's direct involvement with religious affairs, imperial presence ensuring controversy resolution through consensus rather than coercion. The Arian controversy revealed tensions within Christianity requiring imperial mediation. Picture theological arguments engaging Constantine's attention as seriously as military strategy. Complex religious discussions demanding systematic analysis comparable to administrative challenges. His involvement showed how theological unity connected directly with political stability. Watch scholars compiling theological arguments for imperial review, translations prepared cross-referencing doctrinal positions. Constantine's court attracted Christian intellectuals whose learning synthesized classical education with religious doctrine, creating intellectual framework supporting religious transformation within imperial context. Military organization retained fundamental character despite religious change. Picture legions maintaining traditional structure while incorporating Christian chaplains, tactical effectiveness, remaining independent of spiritual affiliation. Veterans served alongside recent recruits, regardless of religious preference, professional military identity transcending confessional differences. Listen to prayers shifting from traditional formulas to Christian petitions without affecting campaign planning or battlefield tactics. Military success continued depending on discipline and training rather than religious uniformity, demonstrating institutional resilience during cultural transformation. Economic policy reflected practical governance rather than religious imperatives. Picture tax assessments following Diocletian's standardization, commercial regulations, maintaining efficiency without theological overlay. Economic administration proceeded through established procedures, while imperial building programs expressed new religious priorities. Watch merchants calculating opportunities in eastern territories, Constantine increasingly favored, their planning balancing traditional Western centers against emerging Eastern importance. Economic networks adapted to shifted imperial attention without requiring religious conversion for commercial participation. Constantinople's foundation represented Constantine's most lasting administrative innovation. Picture surveyors determining optimal position where Byzantium stood, measurements defining capital intended challenging Rome's traditional centrality. The city's location controlled Black Sea access while distancing imperial administration from Rome's entrenched pagan associations. Listen to construction, echoing across 7 deliberately chosen hills, architectural planning replicating Rome's topography while establishing Christian ceremonial priority. Constantinople's public spaces incorporated classical urban design, with churches occupying positions emphasizing new religious focus. Legal evolution gradual incorporated Christian moral concepts within Roman jurisprudential framework. Picture judicial proceedings where traditional procedures increasingly referenced religious principles, criminal penalties influenced by spiritual considerations without abandoning fundamental legal structures. Watch court proceedings opening with Christian prayers, yet following established procedural traditions. Legal appointments emphasized competence rather than religious affiliation, professional expertise maintaining judicial quality regardless of individual faith. Roman legal tradition adapted rather than replaced. Provincial administration balanced traditional governance with emerging Christian influence. Picture governors maintaining classical civic functions while accommodating new religious institutions. Their reports discussing church construction alongside road maintenance. Regional administration adapted pragmatically without revolutionary transformation. Listen to imperial communications, incorporating religious language while preserving administrative efficiency. Provincial responses showed varying degrees of religious adaptation based on local conditions. Imperial policy, flexible enough accommodating regional differences within general Christian direction. Church construction transformed urban landscapes gradually throughout empire. Picture basilicas rising in major cities, their designs combining classical proportions with Christian liturgical requirements. Traditional architecture adapted for new purposes, creating building types expressing Christian spirituality through Roman engineering. Watch craftsmen applying traditional techniques for religious decoration, mosaic artists incorporating biblical scenes using established artistic methods. Cultural synthesis proceeded through practical adaptation rather than theoretical innovation, artistic workshops developing Christian iconography through classical technical expertise. Educational reforms balanced traditional rhetoric with biblical study. Picture schools maintaining classical curricula while incorporating Christian texts, pedagogical methods proven through centuries, adapted for religious instruction. Intellectual training evolved rather than replaced, creating synthesis supporting both cultural continuity and religious innovation. Listen to classroom recitations, combining Virgilian verses with psalm readings, philosophical discussions addressing Christian theology through dialectical methods inherited from classical tradition. Educational institutions adapted existing frameworks rather than creating entirely new approaches. Religious infrastructure development accompanied but didn't replace traditional civic institutions. Picture imperial support creating parallel Christian administrative structure while maintaining classical governmental forms. This dual development prevented systemic disruption while establishing institutional foundation for religious transition. Watch bishops assuming civic responsibilities in some regions while maintaining separation between religious and secular authority elsewhere. Administrative evolution proceeded differently across provinces, regional conditions determining integration pace rather than uniform imperial mandate. Constantine's death in 337 marked consolidation rather than conclusion of transformation. Picture funeral combining Christian rites with traditional imperial honors, demonstrating religious change occurring within rather than replacing classical ceremonial frameworks. Listen to church bells becoming common urban sounds, their rhythm joining traditional daily patterns rather than replacing them. Constantine's legacy created conditions where Christianity developed from persecuted minority to imperial faith through gradual social acceptance rather than forced adoption. As stars shine over monuments, Byzantine and Roman, we recognize revolutionary change proceeding through institutional evolution. Picture Constantinople's domes rising above ancient Roman columns, architectural synthesis representing cultural transformation enabled by administrative continuity. In our next chapter, we'll witness permanent division between Eastern and Western empires, watching how religious and administrative innovations facilitated different developmental paths for regions facing distinct challenges. We'll see institutional flexibility supporting divergent evolution while preserving shared heritage. But for now, as you rest, let gradual transformation guide your thoughts toward peace. Picture crosses atop military standards, traditional procedures adapted for new purposes, revolutionary change proceeding through careful evolution. Dream of societies accommodating fundamental shifts within established frameworks, understanding that lasting change often proceeds through adaptation rather than replacement. Sleep well, knowing profound transformation occurs through patience and persistence rather than sudden revolution. As shadows grow longer across the empire's ancient spine, we witness the emergence of two distinct political entities from what had once been a unified Roman world. Close your eyes and picture the year 395 when the brothers Honorius and Arcadius received their inheritance. An empire so vast and complex that single administration could no longer effectively govern its sprawling territories. Picture the empire's administrative center slowly but decisively shifting eastward, Constantinople glowing with imperial splendor while Rome's traditional authority waned like winter twilight. The Eastern Empire, blessed with greater wealth, more defensible frontiers, and more stable political traditions, would evolve into something distinctly different from its Western counterpart. Listen to the sound of imperial messengers riding between widely separated courts, their hoofbeats marking the growing distance between Western and Eastern capitals. Communication, once central to imperial unity, became diplomatic correspondence between increasingly autonomous realms. Picture these dispatches crossing dangerous territories, their contents shifting from coordinated planning to mutual notifications. The Eastern Empire's prosperity rested on foundations laid by centuries of accumulated wealth. Picture Constantinople's harbors filled with grain ships from Egypt, merchant vessels from Indian Ocean ports, silk traders from Central Asian caravans. The capital's strategic position controlled vital trade routes, its golden solidity providing currency standard that would outlast Western political structures by centuries. Listen to the cacophony of Constantinople's markets, their polyglot exchanges reflecting empire's cultural diversity transformed into economic advantage. Picture spice merchants from Arabia, ivory traders from Africa, textile workers from Anatolia, their interactions creating cosmopolitan center whose prosperity insulated eastern provinces from worst effects of Western disintegration. Religious development in East and West continued along paths begun during Constantine's reign, their differences intensifying over time. Picture Eastern Christianity maintaining closer connection to imperial ceremonial and Greek philosophical traditions established earlier, while Western Christianity adapted increasingly to Germanic tribal customs and Latin legal frameworks. The gradual religious tolerance Constantine had established evolved differently in each region. Listen to liturgical chants echoing through great basilicas, their melodies diverging between Eastern and Western churches as religious practices adapted to regional sensibilities. Constantinople's Hagia Sophia would embody architectural innovation building on Constantine's earlier church construction, while Western churches incorporated fortification elements, their design reflecting military realities absent from better defended Eastern provinces. Military organization reflected each empire's distinct challenges within structures inherited from Diocletian and Constantine. Picture Eastern armies maintaining professional formations developed under Constantine's military reforms, their equipment standardized, training regular, recruitment drawing from stable provincial populations. The Western military increasingly relied on foederati, allied barbarian units, whose equipment, tactics, and loyalty differed fundamentally from traditional Roman legions. Listen to the clash of arms in training yards, Eastern drills maintaining classical precision while Western military camps echoed with Germanic war songs. Picture watchtowers along the Danube defended by professionally trained soldiers. In the East, while Western frontier posts often hosted tribal confederates whose presence represented negotiated settlement rather than direct imperial control. Administrative traditions evolved separately as each empire adapted institutions developed under Diocletian and refined by Constantine. Picture Byzantine bureaucracy developing elaborate ceremonial and hierarchical complexity, building on Constantinople's foundation, its officials creating documentation systems of unprecedented detail. Western administration simplified through necessity, its practitioners developing more flexible procedures, accommodating tribal leaders and Germanic law codes within traditional Roman frameworks. Listen to the scratching of imperial styluses, recording different types of information. Eastern clerks, maintaining detailed census data, recording theological disputes, documenting trade agreements. Western scribes often recorded military arrangements, tribal settlements, religious conversions, their documentation reflecting immediate survival concerns rather than systematic administration. Legal development proceeded along parallel paths, emerging from Constantine's legal synthesis. Picture Eastern jurists compiling comprehensive law codes, their work building on existing Roman legal tradition while incorporating Christian principles. Western legal practice became increasingly influenced by Germanic customary law, resulting in hybrid systems that blended Roman institutional frameworks with tribal precedents. Listen to court proceedings conducted in different languages, Eastern tribunals using Greek for complex legal reasoning, Western courts increasingly hearing testimony in Latin mixed with Germanic dialects. Picture legal documents are written in different scripts, employing different terminologies, addressing different social structures. Economic systems reflected geographic and political realities within framework Constantine had established. Picture Eastern merchants operating within relatively stable currency zone, their transactions facilitated by Constantinople's commercial networks. Western commerce adapted to frequent disruptions, using barter more frequently, developing local currency standards, creating commercial networks, accommodating tribal territories outside direct imperial control. Listen to the ring of hammers in mint facilities, producing different coinages. Eastern solidus maintaining gold standard, established earlier, Western denarii often debased through necessity. Picture marketplace negotiations requiring currency exchange, merchants calculating equivalencies between Eastern and Western systems, trade agreements specifying payment methods acceptable to both parties. Cultural production diverged as regional influences strengthened beyond Constantine's unifying vision. Picture Eastern artists developing icon painting traditions, their stylized religious imagery drawing on Syriac and Coptic sources. Western artistic production incorporated Germanic motifs, manuscript illumination blending classical forms with tribal decorative traditions. Literary culture maintained shared Latin heritage while developing distinct vernacular traditions reflecting local populations. Listen to scholars in Constantinople preserving classical texts through careful copying, their libraries maintaining comprehensive collections of Greek and Roman literature. Western monasteries focused on practical texts, agricultural manuals, religious commentaries, law codes, their preservation reflecting immediate utility rather than comprehensive cultural conservation. Urban development patterns are reflected separate challenges building on Constantine's earlier transformations. Picture Constantinople expanding with planned suburbs, public baths, forums maintaining classical civic functions established during its foundation. Western cities often contracted within defensive perimeters, their public spaces converted to residential use, civic functions reduced to essential services. Listen to different daily rhythms. Eastern cities maintaining elaborate public ceremonies, their populations gathering for imperial appearances, religious processions, chariot races. Western urban life centered increasingly on ecclesiastical calendar, religious observances replacing traditional civic festivals, local rulers providing protection rather than entertainment. Diplomatic relations between East and West became complex negotiations between semi independent powers descended from unified Constantine administration. Picture envoys traveling between Constantinople and Ravenna, their missions addressing territorial disputes, religious differences, military cooperation against common threats. Treaties required careful language, acknowledging both unity and autonomy, formal recognition of division, while maintaining fiction of imperial unity. As winter stars shine over two empires sharing common Roman heritage while developing separate identities, we reflect on division's long term consequences. Picture Constantinople's great walls protecting prosperous Byzantine continuity, while Rome's ancient monuments stood empty or converted to new purposes, their imperial grandeur fading into medieval practicality. In our next chapter, we shall witness the final collapse of Western imperial structure, watching as barbarian kingdoms established themselves on former Roman territory, while the Eastern Empire evolved into Byzantine civilization. We will see how institutional inheritance enabled cultural continuity, even as political unity dissolved permanently. But for now, as you prepare for sleep, let the parallel development of two Roman worlds guide your thoughts toward rest. Picture flickering oil lamps in Constantinople's libraries, preserving classical texts, while Western monasteries copied practical manuscripts for immediate use. Dream of empires adapting to different challenges while maintaining shared memory of unified past, of political separation, enabling cultural survival through adaptation to regional circumstances. As twilight deepens over ancient Rome, we witness the final act of a drama that had unfolded across centuries. Close your eyes and picture the year 476 when a young boy named Romulus Augustulus, bearing names that ironically echoed both Rome's founding and its greatest emperor, would be the last person to claim the title of Western Roman Emperor. Listen to the gentle splash of oars as Odoacer's messenger crossed the Adriatic, carrying imperial regalia back to Constantinople, not as tribute, but as acknowledgement that the West no longer needed an emperor of its own. Picture Romulus Augustulus in his final moments of imperial dignity, a child of perhaps 12 summers, his purple robes far too large for his slight frame. The ceremonial crown slipped slightly as he stood to hear Odoacer's decree, not one of execution or brutality, but a surprisingly gentle retirement to a comfortable villa in Campania. Listen to his voice, still unchanged by puberty, as he spoke the words that ended nearly 5 centuries of Western imperial rule. I renounce the empire. Picture Odoacer, a Germanic chieftain whose own origins remained somewhat mysterious, governing Italy with practical competence while acknowledging the Eastern emperor's theoretical supremacy. His kingship represented evolution rather than revolution. Roman administrative structures continued. Latin remained the language of government. Traditional ceremonies persisted with new performers. Listen to the sound of daily life in Rome, continuing much as before. Markets operated, aqueducts flowed, churches celebrated services, workshops produced goods. The absence of a Western emperor meant less immediate disruption than the famines, plagues, and invasions that had preceded this moment. Picture citizens going about their business, perhaps unaware that historians would mark this as epical transition. Germanic kingdoms had been establishing themselves on Roman territory for generations before 476. Picture the Visigoths in Spain, the Vandals in North Africa, the Ostrogoths in Italy itself. Each group initially arriving as foederati, allied troops contracted by Rome, then gradually transforming into independent kingdoms. Their kings adopted Roman titles, employed Roman administrators, maintained Roman law codes adapted to Germanic customs. Listen to the multilingual conversations in former Roman territories, Latin mixing with Gothic, Frankish, Vandal tongues, creating linguistic synthesis that would eventually produce Romance languages. Picture royal courts where Germanic warriors sat alongside Roman bureaucrats, their collaboration creating hybrid governmental forms that preserved Roman institutional knowledge while adapting to tribal social structures. Administrative continuity enabled political transformation. The Visigoths had sacked Rome in 410, yet this earlier trauma had been followed by restoration. Picture the aftermath of Alaric's withdrawal, Romans rebuilding damaged structures, normal life resuming, imperial authority reasserted. The Vandals repeated this pattern in 455, yet again Rome recovered from physical damage. What proved irrecoverable was not buildings, but the financial and military resources to maintain imperial administration across vast territories. Listen to the final generations of Western imperial courts, their proceedings maintaining elaborate ceremonial even as effective power contracted to ever smaller territories. Military evolution had gradually transformed Roman armies into something unrecognizable to earlier legions. Picture the foederati arrangements, entire Germanic tribes settling within imperial territories, receiving land grants in exchange for military service. Their equipment, training, leadership structures differed fundamentally from classical Roman formations. Listen to commanders issuing orders in Germanic dialects, military ceremonies incorporating tribal customs, traditional discipline giving way to warrior codes. Watch veteran Roman officers training barbarian recruits, their instructions requiring translation, their drill manuals adapted to accommodate different fighting styles. Economic contraction accelerated through the 5th century as trade networks fragmented under political division. Picture abandoned villas in Gaul, their agricultural output disrupted by warfare, their populations seeking protection in fortified settlements. Mediterranean commerce declined as pirates controlled sea routes. Germanic kingdoms imposed different taxation and commercial regulations. Listen to the final echoes of classical urban life. Public baths closing due to aqueduct maintenance costs, forums transformed into marketplaces for local trade, theatrical performances replaced by religious ceremonies. The physical infrastructure of Roman civic life proved too expensive to maintain without imperial resources. Religious authority provided continuity as political institutions fragmented. Picture Pope Leo the Great meeting Attila the Hun in 452, his spiritual prestige enabling negotiation where military force had failed. Church organization maintained administrative coherence across transforming territories, bishops assuming civil responsibilities as imperial officials disappeared. Listen to church bells calling communities to prayer, their rhythm replacing traditional civic timekeeping. Picture bishops conducting judicial proceedings, managing grain distribution, organizing public works, responsibilities once handled by imperial magistrates, now falling to ecclesiastical authorities. Barbarian kingdoms developed distinct governmental forms while incorporating Roman elements. Picture the Merovingian Franks establishing systems combining Germanic kingship with Roman provincial administration. Visigothic law codes blended traditional tribal customs with Roman legal principles. Ostrogothic courts maintained classical ceremonial while adapting it to Gothic royal traditions. Listen to royal councils, where Germanic chiefs consulted Roman advisors, their deliberations mixing traditional tribal decision-making with administrative expertise inherited from imperial bureaucracy. Picture legal proceedings applying codified Roman law modified by Germanic customary traditions, creating jurisdictional systems that preserved classical jurisprudence while adapting to tribal social structures. Justinian's reconquest attempts in the 6th century demonstrated the Eastern Empire's continued claim to Western territories. Picture Byzantine armies conquering North Africa, retaking parts of Italy and Spain, briefly restoring imperial authority across Mediterranean regions. Yet these recoveries proved temporary, the logistical strain of governing distant territories, eventually forcing Byzantine withdrawal. Listen to Byzantine administrators attempting to reimpose classical tax systems on regions that had adapted to lighter tribal taxation. Picture local populations caught between conflicting jurisdictions, Byzantine government competing with established Gothic authorities. The Reconquest's ultimate failure demonstrated that Roman imperial system could no longer effectively govern Western territories. Cultural preservation proceeded through various channels despite political dissolution. Picture monasteries copying classical texts for practical and religious reasons, their libraries maintaining works that might otherwise disappear. Educational traditions continued in modified forms, cathedral schools teaching Latin literacy, royal courts employing scholarly advisors, legal traditions preserved through continuous professional practice. Listen to scholars compiling encyclopedic summaries of classical knowledge, their works abbreviated for practical use in schools with limited resources. Picture theological debates employing philosophical methods inherited from classical tradition, legal disputes citing Roman precedents, architectural projects incorporating classical proportions with a new stylistic frameworks. The process of Rome's fall stretched across generations rather than occurring as single event. Picture the gradual transformation, imperial offices becoming honorary titles, Roman law codes modified by Germanic additions, Latin evolving into regional dialects, classical education becoming ecclesiastical training. Listen to the final Western imperial decrees issued from Ravenna, their language maintaining traditional formulas, even as actual authority extended barely beyond the city walls. Picture imperial bureaucracy continuing routine functions, recording births, adjudicating local disputes, maintaining property records, while larger political structures dissolved around them. Germanic succession systems influenced how former Roman territories developed politically. Picture kingship becoming personal rather than institutional, royal authority based on charismatic leadership and tribal loyalty rather than abstract constitutional principles. Administrative positions became hereditary within families rather than professional appointments. Listen to oaths of personal loyalty replacing citizenship obligations, tribal councils superseding urban assemblies, private agreements replacing public law enforcement. Picture social organization restructuring around personal relationships between lords and dependents rather than civic duties between citizens and state. As moonlight illuminates the empty throne room of the Palatine Palace, we reflect on endings that became beginnings. Picture ancient Roman buildings, repurposed for new uses, temples converted to churches, forums transformed into marketplaces, baths divided into private residences. Physical structures persisted while their functions changed, creating continuity within transformation. In our final chapter, we shall explore Rome's enduring legacy, examining how classical cultural inheritance influenced centuries of subsequent European development. We will see how Roman legal principles, architectural techniques, linguistic evolution, and governmental concepts continued shaping Western civilization long after imperial political structures disappeared. But for now, as you prepare for sleep, let the gradual transformation of Rome's fall guide your thoughts toward rest. Picture ancient buildings adapting to new purposes, classical knowledge preserved through careful copying, legal traditions maintained through practical application. Dream of endings that enable new beginnings, of institutional structures proving more durable than political forms, of cultural inheritance transcending political dissolution. As starlight falls on ruins that still stand like proud sentinels across 3 continents, we contemplate how Rome's influence continues to shape our world centuries after its political dissolution. Close your eyes and picture an evening in any modern European city. Pedestrians walking on streets that follow Roman routes, entering buildings where Roman architectural principles still guide design, living under legal systems descended from Roman jurisprudence. Listen to the echo of Latin in scientific terminology, legal phrases, and the Romance languages spoken by hundreds of millions today. Picture the vast network of Roman roads, their stone foundations still supporting modern thoroughfares. The Appian Way's ancient stones bear witness to engineering knowledge that created transportation infrastructure lasting 2 millennia. Listen to the ring of hammers as modern engineers study Roman construction techniques, discovering concrete formulas that remain remarkably effective, bridge designs that balance loads with mathematical precision still applied today. Roman engineering represents not merely historical curiosity, but practical knowledge continuing to inform contemporary construction. The preservation of Roman law stands among humanity's greatest intellectual achievements. Picture medieval scholars in quiet libraries, carefully copying Justinian's Corpus Juris Civilis, its principles forming foundation for legal systems across Europe and beyond. Listen to modern courtrooms, where concepts like presumption of innocence, burden of proof, and legal precedent echo Roman jurisprudential innovations. Architectural legacy manifests in buildings addressing eternal human needs for beauty, function, and durability. Picture the dome of St. Peter's Basilica, echoing the Pantheon's engineering breakthrough, state capitals worldwide incorporating Roman colonnade designs, public monuments employing triumphal arch motifs. Listen to architects discussing classical proportions, urban planners creating civic spaces based on Roman forum principles. Language transformation demonstrates Rome's cultural penetration. Picture Latin evolving through centuries into Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Romanian, languages that preserve Roman grammatical structures while adapting to regional influences. Listen to English speakers using Latin-derived vocabulary for approximately 60% of common words, scientific terminology, maintaining Latin precision for universal communication. Educational traditions, established by Rome, continue influencing how societies transmit knowledge. Picture classical curricula emphasizing rhetoric, logic, and mathematical reasoning, subjects Romans considered essential for civic participation, still forming core elements of liberal arts education. Listen to academic debates employing dialectical methods refined in Roman schools, students learning persuasive techniques developed by Cicero. Political concepts pioneered by Rome resonate through modern democratic institutions. Picture constitutional governments balanced between executive, legislative, and judicial branches, their separation reflecting Roman understanding of power's corrupting potential. Listen to legislators referencing Roman precedents for representative government, political theorists citing Tacitus and Polybius when discussing governmental forms. Military organization worldwide reflects Roman innovations in training, logistics, and command structure. Picture modern armies maintaining hierarchical officer systems descended from centurion tradition, military academies, teaching tactics developed through Roman campaign experience, supply chain management employing principles refined across Rome's vast territorial administration. Urban planning principles developed by Rome guide contemporary city development. Picture municipal services, water supply, sewage systems, public transportation, following patterns established by Roman engineering, zoning regulations, reflecting Roman understanding of urban density management, public spaces designed according to classical principles of civic accessibility. Religious architectural forms created by Romans influenced sacred spaces across cultures. Picture basilica design adapted for Christian worship, its longitudinal plan and elevated sanctuary reflecting Roman ceremonial requirements, Byzantine churches incorporating Roman structural innovations while developing distinct Eastern aesthetic. Literature preservation efforts maintained Roman texts through careful monastic copying. Picture medieval scribes laboring over manuscripts, their dedication preserving Virgil's poetry, Livy's history, Seneca's philosophy for future generations. Listen to modern classicists discovering previously unknown Roman texts, their scholarship revealing continuing relevance of ancient insights. Legal inheritance extends beyond formal codes into conceptual frameworks for justice. Picture international law developing from Roman understanding of ius gentium, law of nations, their diplomatic protocols establishing templates for modern treaty negotiation. Listen to human rights discourse employing concepts of inherent dignity derived from Roman Stoic philosophy. Social institutions based on Roman models continue functioning across cultures. Picture marriage contracts employing legal frameworks developed from Roman family law, educational systems maintaining Roman emphasis on civic responsibility alongside practical skills, charitable organizations following patterns established by Roman concepts of social obligation. Administrative innovations pioneered by Rome enable modern government function. Picture bureaucratic systems maintaining Roman separation between civil and military authority. Census procedures descended from Roman population documentation methods, tax collection employing accounting principles, refined through imperial administration. Cultural synthesis, facilitated by Rome, created patterns for modern multicultural societies. Picture urban centers, combining diverse traditions while maintaining civic order, educational systems, incorporating multiple cultural perspectives within common frameworks, legal structures accommodating various customs while preserving universal principles. Economic concepts developed through Roman commercial practice influence global trade. Picture modern shipping practices maintaining routes established by Roman merchants, banking systems employing credit instruments descended from Roman financial innovation, commercial law preserving Roman understanding of contractual obligations across jurisdictions. Technological knowledge preserved and transmitted through Roman channels continues enabling construction. Picture concrete formulas rediscovered from Roman sources, providing sustainable building materials, hydraulic engineering principles first systematized by Romans solving contemporary water management challenges, surveying techniques developed for Roman road construction, enabling precise modern mapping. Artistic traditions established by Rome influence aesthetic development across media. Picture sculptors employing proportional systems refined by Roman artists, painters using perspective techniques developed through Roman architectural representation, designers incorporating classical motifs in contemporary contexts. Philosophical concepts transmitted through Roman thinkers continue informing ethical discourse. Picture Stoic principles of duty and rational governance influencing leadership development programs, Epicurean insights about pleasure and moderation shaping lifestyle philosophy, Roman political ethics guiding discussions about public service obligations. Memory preservation techniques developed by Romans enable cultural continuity across generations. Picture memorial architecture following Roman models for commemorating significant events and individuals, historical documentation maintaining Roman standards for recording public decisions, educational curricula employing Roman methods for transmitting cultural values through narrative structure. As perpetual flames burn in modern memorial sites, echoing the Vestal tradition, we recognize how Rome's greatest legacy lies not in political domination, but in institutional and cultural frameworks that continue enabling human civilization. Picture contemporary societies unconsciously employing Roman organizational principles, legal concepts, architectural solutions, and educational methods in daily life. Our journey through Rome's rise and transformation reveals how civilizations influence future development through ideas rather than direct political control. From humble beginnings on 7 hills beside the Tiber, Rome created institutional structures, legal principles, and cultural patterns that transcended its temporal boundaries, providing foundation stones for Western civilization's continued development. As you prepare for final rest, let contemplation of Rome's enduring influence guide your thoughts toward peaceful sleep. Picture ancient Roman buildings standing proudly throughout today's world, their columns supporting modern structures, their engineering enabling contemporary construction, their proportions guiding aesthetic sensibilities across cultures and centuries. Listen to the eternal city's whispered promise. Though empires rise and fall, human achievement in law, language, architecture, and organization creates lasting legacy transcending political boundaries. Rome's true immortality lives not in territorial control, but in ideas that continue shaping how humanity builds societies, creates justice, constructs beauty, and preserves knowledge for future generations. Sleep well, dream deeply, and wake to a world still benefiting from Roman innovation in ways both obvious and subtle, their legacy a foundation upon which we continue building human civilization's next chapters.